Good evening. Welcome to the Scottsville Town Council work session for Monday, January 9th, 2023. My name is Matt Lawless. I serve as Scottsville's Town Administrator. This evening's meeting is held in compliance with Virginia's Freedom of Information Act and the state's open meeting laws. Our meeting is open to the public at the Town Office Building, 401 Valley Street in Scottsville. We also have opportunities for the public to participate online, on Zoom, and by calling in. The meeting is a work session and does not include a public comment period. We're still assembling our quorum and getting ready for the evening's meeting. The local time here now is 10 minutes until 7 o'clock. So I'll mute this line while we continue to get set up. If you're watching in the future on our YouTube channel, thank you. You can skip ahead on your video 10 minutes and you'll see the meeting come to order. Thank you.
Got to be an improvement.
So it's 7 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started with this. This morning about what I heard. Yeah, just a couple of notes, just to remind the public in attendance tonight. This is a council work session. It's not a public forum or anything. It's for the council to discuss matters of council importance. Therefore, the public is not invited to speak this evening. The other thing is, I know sometimes topics get people a little bit riled up, and so we're just going to ask all the council, including myself, act like adults, that if a council member is speaking, let that council member finish their speaking before you speak. Just raise your hand, I'll recognize you as soon as the person speaking has completed what they need to say, and if they need to come back and but we can do that too. But let's don't break in on anybody that has a floor and is speaking. Let's act like adults and not children. So we'll start off with the police chief's report. Their police department.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and council members, thank you for.
Great, it's good to see you.
Person.
Good to see you.
Thank you all for having me this afternoon, this evening, and giving me an opportunity to give you some information on what the police department's doing. You can see a couple of calls for service. Our firefighter partners have responded to that location on Page Street a number of different times. On this particular day, we had to respond back out there again. I met with him and some of his team. Only found that one female that we had been dealing with had pulled the fire alarm again. This time I placed her into custody, took her to the magistrate's office, and charged her with misdemeanor summonsing emergency services. She has subsequently again been hospitalized since, and every time I say this, I jinx myself. Things have been quiet on the home front since the last PDO, but I'm not sure that she's out of the hospital yet. So we'll see what happens when she gets back. I know I've been working with management there, and they've talking about trying to make some other arrangements for that individual there at the apartment complex. So we'll see. The other one was during that real cold spell that we had noticed that there was water. And you can see some of the pictures that I've taken for you. It's a couple pages back. It's right there at the Dollar General's entrance there at just at Irish Road at Valley Street, where that water is bubbling up through the intersection there. So I had an opportunity to go over there, get VDOT to come down. That section of the road was freezing up every morning, and they'd have to come down and treat it. So a little bit more investigation found that there was water also running down along that curb all the way down to where CNS is at. Had VDOT, had the water authority folks out, only to discover this sinkhole here that has formed next to that sewer top. That whole ground right there has sunk in. And I was told by some of our VDOT partners that there's a stream that runs underneath all the way down Valley Street. Looks like it runs down through this and then down along this curb. As you can see, down along the curb there, that creek runs all the way down to where CNS is at and then runs back over to CNS's property. They can't, that what they've told me was that they could figure out is all the culvert pipes, the steel culvert pipes that were routing that water down through and across the road has all disintegrated. Now the water is freely running down through here and down south just before CNS, there's a blockage. They put cameras and stuff up the pipe, down the pipe, there's a blockage. And with that blockage, it's causing that water to seep up through that highway there. VDOT said it's not their problem. They're not going to deal with it until it becomes a problem. I asked them, I said, if it happens in the middle of the highway, it's gonna be VDOT's problem, why don't we just work on it? And he said, we're not gonna touch it until it becomes a problem.
Looks like a problem.
Well, they're talking about this type of problem. He assured me that eventually there's gonna be a sinkhole that forms there in that roadway or down on this parking lot property. Not sure where it's gonna pop out.
So VDOT knows that a sinkhole is forming and it will
That's exactly-
absolutely become a sinkhole.
Well,
And that's when it's their problem?
that's when it becomes their problem. So what I've been doing is working with the property owners that own Dollar General. And I've alerted the owners and their attorneys as to what's going on there, sent them the same pictures and some additional pictures. And the property owners are working to address this problem here. on their
Where-
end.
Where exactly is this?
You know where the Dollar General store
Uh-huh.
sign sets right here? That's right in front of it, right at the.
On this side?
Yes, it'll be on the right side as you're pulling, well, I guess it'll be on the left side as you're pulling in. Right where the Dollar General sign's at. Is where this is at. And there's your parking lot there, the start of it, and that's the curb.
Gotcha.
And then this is probably 4 foot, 5 foot deep now. And looking in that, underneath this concrete tube here, there's a panel, a lid that we took off, and you could actually see the old culvert pipe going into this manhole, and it actually runs down the street. It's all disintegrated.
But
So,
if you're saying, so chief, you're saying it's all backed up, is what you're saying from the.
down the street, so I guess south, there's a blockage. I don't know what the blockage is. The water authority couldn't tell me what the blockage was down there. They couldn't get through it. But what's happening is because the water can't continue south, that it's backing up, and when it's backing up, it's finding that path of least resistance, and it's coming up through that highway right there, where you see it in that photograph up there. Water Sewer Authority said that it's not their issue. They have no lines or anything that's leaking water, so that's not their problem. VDOT says that they're not gonna touch it until it becomes a problem in the highway.
Didn't we have an accident though, right there a couple of years ago with this item?
We've had a couple of crashes in that
I
intersection.
mean, I'm familiar with it, I live across the street, but but that ice,
It was a pretty daily event to have VDOT come and treat that section of the highway there, because when cars come through it, they're of course tracking it south
Right.
and north. And it would cause slick conditions there in that section.
Who laid all this pipe in? I mean, I know it's old and we might not have that information. Who laid all this pipe originally?
I'm
Did that
not
do
sure.
that?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming by my conversations with the Dollar General owner and attorneys that this problem is most likely Dollar General's problem. Because it comes in on their piece of property, and these pipes run down along the street into this piece of property and then back out along that street down south and then cuts across the road over to CNS. I'm assuming that some of the old pipes looked old.
Yeah.
And I'm surmising, I surmise what they've done is probably taken new pipe and attached or run what they could from this manhole and attached it to the old pipes. And that's why the old pipes are just gone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're aware of it.
That's a shame. I mean,
Well, the attorney has told the owner that they need to fix it.
Okay.
So I think they're trying to, I think he's trying to put some pressure on Dollar General to actually do something with it as well.
That's what I mean. They're fighting.
but I feel like if the blockage is by CNS.
It's on this side of the street, on the northbound side of the street is where the blockage is
I
at.
see, I see.
So that thing goes, the way it looked, it goes down across the parking lot where the parking lot entrance is at, goes down that left curve or that northbound curve. Down to where CNS is at, and then it goes under the highway. That's why VDOT can't put that guardrail back up at CNS again, because that stream runs down along that property line and the roadway. And there's not enough shoulder there to put another guardrail in. So it's a mess. Matt and I have been trying to work with them, and get some cooperation to try to get it taken care of, but I haven't gotten any calls since last week on it.
Right at that location, we were talking about, they can't put guardrails in. And CNS has got the orange cones that they've used from time to time. But just to make it kind of hit the middle ground, can't they put steel rod with reflectors, maybe every 10 feet, maybe a series of 4 or 5, just to let people know that there is something there, and you wouldn't have the ugly orange cones, and of course you wouldn't have your guardrail. That's kind of a compromise.
I have talked with VDOT a number of times. I had John Wilson, I've talked to him by phone several times, and I also spoke with him the day that he come down to town and talked with me and Matt about the parking. And asked him, where are we at with this traffic calming study? And he assured me that I was going to be invited to one of their monthly meetings in the very near future to talk about that very situation. At least they've told me that they're not going to put anything in that curve right there. No steel, no nothing. So what I'm trying to work with them is, can we put bigger speed limit signs when it transitions from 35 to 25? Can we put, some of the rumble strips where it transitions from 35 to the 25 and just down below that curve, not into the town, but just around that curve, get people's attention, slow down a little bit, but I'm keep working on it. I got you.
We've tried to get rumble strips before, and they said no.
Yeah. Yep, kind of about where I'm at with them. They haven't told me no, but I'm still working on it. I haven't been told yes. So. Any other questions on that? No. Community engagements. Again, that didn't change from the last time we spoke. Our auxiliary officers for the month worked 24 and a half hours with the police department. Did have some IT work this past month. Added a few new policies. Like I said, town manager, administrator, and I met with John Wilson, the roadway engineer, to talk about the parking along Valley Street. ACPD did complete the traffic study. I think you have a copy of that. And I just put some of the highlights in there for you. The average volume per day was 781.4 vehicles northbound. And the traffic study was done from November the 3rd through the 10th. And it run 24/7 for 7 days, right in that 35-mile-an-hour zone where it transitions from the county from 55 into the 35. So you can see we had a daily average of 781 vehicles northbound. And the slowest vehicle was at 10 miles an hour, and the fastest vehicle was at 55 miles an hour. Average speed was right at about 32 miles an hour, with 34 miles an hour in the 50th percentile, and then 38 miles an hour in the 85% percentile. So, as you can see by the graph, it does not look like that there's a major speed issue in that section of the highway, but it also allows me to see the peak times a day of when the most of the highest speeds are, from about 6 o'clock in the morning until about 8 o'clock in the morning. And then it picks up again, like we all know, at about 11:30. And it stays fairly consistent to about 2, and then it steadily drops off until midnight. So that just gives us an idea of what that 35 mile an hour through there looks like. Any questions on that?
I should know the answer to this, but the 8100 block, that's just right over the bridge.
No, it's right up here, close to where the tire place is at.
Okay,
What's it called? I should know. Quality Tire 2. That's it. It's right in that area.
okay, so that side.
And it's catching them coming out of the 35 mile an hour zone before it gets to the 55. A brief on our calls for service. We've been dispatched to a total of 1,379 calls for service, January to December. Would council prefer to see year to date or fiscal year July 1st to June? I started it in mid-cycle, so I did it January and tracked them up through December. I'm okay either way. That council would prefer to see the calls for service, but this year I just did it January to December.
I like calendar year, to be honest.
Okay.
I couldn't exactly tell you why though.
I think that makes sense too. Calendar.
Okay. There have been 729 calls for service just in the town of Scottsville itself. SBPD had been dispatched to 664 of those calls for service. Albemarle County handled 63 of those calls for service, right at 8%. We conducted 249 traffic stops, 172 warnings, 77 citations, 21 custodial arrests for the calendar year. And then I did a breakdown of the calls for service. So the first, 4 bullets here that you see are just comparisons of calls for service in the town of Scottsville itself from 2019 to 2022. And then you go from the total call for service below that, from 19 to 22. So it's been right around a 63% increase in call for service for us this year. But again, we're coming out of that 2021 COVID. So if you look, we're at 1379, and it looks like really the busiest time that I tracked it was 2019, right before COVID hit. But the calls for service in the town for 2019 were just short of what we had for 2022. So just kind of gives you a perspective of what your police officers are responding to in the town.
Chief, let me ask you a question, maybe a good time to ask it.
Yes, sir.
So you'd say maybe 7 to 8% of the calls are handled by a mutual aid Albemarle. So you all responding to 92, 93% of the calls within the limits.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why and when does that happen?
Well, it's happening during the times when I don't have an officer in the town on the schedule working. So most mornings I'll be in the town between about 7:30 in the morning, and then I'll work until 4, 5 o'clock in the evening. But the nighttime officers, they come on at about 2:30 in the evening, depending on if they work later at night. So they work a 10-hour schedule. So if they come on at 2:30, they'll work until 12:30 a.m. I've been looking at the calls for service, and most of the calls that Albemarle is responding to are between about 4:30, 5:30 in the morning when I'm not on duty yet. So when we're not on duty under our MOU, Albemarle County will cover the call for service.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and how you doing with that MOU?
Well, I did talk with the deputy chief with Albemarle County. Their attorney, Amanda Farley, emailed us back and said it was out of her office and it was back over at ACPD. And the deputy chief or the assistant chief said that he was working on it, but I have not seen it yet.
Okay. And as far as the response, in that 4:30 morning, when you guys are passing in the night,
Yes, sir.
are we getting a good response times from Albemarle? Does it take them longer as opposed to having someone on duty here that could maybe be more timely?
Well, certainly officers in the town are going to respond quicker, for sure. Our response times are just a couple of minutes. If Albemarle County, it depends on where that officer, that south side officer is at. That south side officer, Sector 5's got 212 square miles to patrol. I would like to use the analogy from Red Hill Road all the way south to Howardsville, and everything east and west in between is that officer's responsibility. Saturdays and Sundays, I typically don't have an officer in the town early morning. There was a crash on East Main that it took an Albemarle officer, it's an hour and a half to get to. And then the burglary that we had at the cemetery, it was a 2-hour response time. That dispatcher is going to prioritize their calls. So that type of a call is a past incident. If it's a crash, nobody's injured, and they've got a domestic that's going on in someplace else towards town, that's where they're going to go before they get to a crash here in the town, or to a past burglary that has happened the night before. It's going to be privatized just like that.
And of course, if Albemarle County has something that one officer can't handle, they got to pull the southern officer to go do that. So 712 square miles is roughly covered by 3 officers in Albemarle County.
The 212,
The whole county.
the whole county, that's 726 square miles, typically 9-10 officers. I'm not exactly sure what their staffing levels are now per shift, but I know when I left, it was 10 officers.
It's conceivable our southern guy could be pulled off.
It's very conceivable that south side officer is going to be up towards Charlottesville in that urban ring area.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Quick question, just riding on Eddie's coattails. It's like triage. I understand the need for, prioritizing the calls. Have we had any incidents where it was something violent, like a domestic going on or something like that, where they've had to wait for Albemarle? And do we know then how long the wait time is? Never.
That's why when I first come on, I really took a look at our work schedule to determine, was the 12-hour work schedule for our officers working? And I felt, if you remember when I reported out on the work schedule change, that the 10-hour work schedule for our officers allowed me more flexibility with overlap days to be able to put them on special projects, enforcement type issues and things like quality of life issues, to address those type of things. My being able to have a flexible schedule, I work a lot during the daytime to cover the daytime calls for service. I believe that our businesses and our residents here in town deserve that police presence. So I cover early morning to evening, make sure our officers get briefed on all of the daytime happenings. And then if there's anything going on at nighttime, they'll let me know. If I need to respond back, I'll respond back. But it's worked out to where we're able to cover about 92% of the calls for service in the town.
I hope I didn't sound like I was questioning
No,
that. I
not
think
at
you're doing amazing.
Not at all. Not at all. It's a fair question. But there have been none of those type of issues that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It could happen, but none that I'm aware of.
Any other questions for the chief? I just have one comment, and that is, I think it was the town Facebook page of school bus driver by the name of Cindy Cobb.
Yes, sir.
Did you see that post?
Yes, sir. Mr. Payne and I spoke about it Friday.
I tried to call her today and I have not been able to reach.
Oh, I've already spoke with her.
Okay.
I was there sitting there this morning, first thing. And I will make sure that I'm there the rest of the week. And it worked out well this morning. Good. But I'm hoping we don't have to hand out any coupons next week when I'm not quite as visible.
As long as she knows that we're working on it, that's.
Oh, she saw me this morning and gave me 2 thumbs up.
All right.
I got a call Friday. I called him, he called her, and it's getting done. So I hope we can
Good.
find a solution.
Thank you so much again for all you do.
Yes, sir.
Chamber of Commerce had a board meeting this past Wednesday of last week, and we are going to try to get the Citizen of the Year Award program cranked up again this spring, if we can find some place to have a get together. We talked about working with the town and with SCAN on joint projects and making some use of the SCAN property over on Hardware across from the cemetery for maybe outdoor concerts or something like that. So everything's just in the planning stage right now, and that's basically all we had to talk about. The chamber does have a new website, and if you haven't looked at it, it is really done, it was done by professionals. And it looks really nice, so. ARB, Mr. Bullock.
Three items. First is the Dollar General. Here's again tonight's minutes. We've been trying to work with the Dollar General, I think for the past 2 years now, to try to figure out who's responsible for actually implementing their certificate of appropriateness for landscaping that should have been done long before that. So we finally teed up the appropriate legal chain of communication for enforcement for this year. The guy who's working for them now, who's trying to seemingly get their entire organization in order, is keen to get this work done. They weren't able to get the plantings in this fall, but I think that's probably for the best. I don't think November would have been a good time to start digging in the ground. But in the spring, we're anticipating that they'll implement the landscaping plan down there. Part of that does deal with drainage off the site too. Because the way they designed it was not in alignment with what was approved for how water should move across the parking lot of the surface. So that may at least help some of the issues. I know the underground stuff will probably not be impacted by this site, but I'm glad we're coming at them from two different legal angles, trying to get some movement on that property. The other issue there is it looks like they replaced their lighting, and they have these sort of bright lights, which were not approved, but they're in the entrance corridor, so those should probably have shielding on them. We're gonna get this landscaping thing moving and then address the shielding of the lights, because that also needs to be addressed.
Just a question for you, and I don't know if I'm not sure which place to mention it, but one of the dilemmas they have also is it's very common for the big gust of wind to bring an enormous amount of trash from their property. I'm aware because I'm on the other side of the street, and last week, thankfully, Decker cleaned it up as I was myself down in that area, but there's an ongoing issue that they have. Is that something you guys have talked about at all? Or? Okay.
No, that's beyond our specific purview.
Sure.
But we're following up on the landscaping. I feel like we have a thing in place to do that now, and the lighting will be our next thing to return to them with to fix. So that's the Dollar General. The train, well, I'll mention the train station. Last year we got some funding from CSX, I think $4,000 to fix the train station. It was rated for our last inventory for the last number of years, and CSX hasn't responded about it. And as you recall, CSX didn't want to do the work because they didn't want to pay their workers to do it. They didn't feel like they wanted to invest the money in it, so they gave up the grant for $4,000, and then we signed off on an agreement that would allow us to hire someone to access their site, which is private property, to do the work. That work has been scoped, and the $4,000 grant is significantly shy of the amount of money needed to fix the exterior of that train station, which now has a collapsing chimney. The rot around the exterior is significant, both under and along the fascia portion just below the roof. So that work is not going to get done without further council approval. So that property is going to be rated 4 again this year. And then I think when we later this spring, decide what we want to do, if it's worthwhile to put more money in it, or if we just want to follow a more sort of straightforward legal proceeding CSX to see if they'll do it. And so I just wanted to give you that update that'll be later discussion. The inventory, we finished our inventory of historic properties in December, and so at our meeting we reviewed properties that are rated fair or poor. Poor condition properties are any that are unsealed, meaning could be a broken window pane, rotting wood timbers on the roof, anything that's unsealed, and any imminent structural failings. And fair properties are those that may be approaching those conditions. So we identified what those are. We split up the inventory so that none of us would be viewing our own home, should we be historic residents, and or historical Lake District residents. None of us are historic residents as of yet. And then our architect, who did not do that original survey, he's going to go around and look at all the fair and poor condition properties that we identified to make sure that we were the big. So sort of 2 layers of oversight there. In March, we will confirm which properties are for condition, and that matters to us because those are the property owners who will receive a notice from us that they have 90 days to meet the ARB to come up with a plan to begin fixing the problem. So I will let you know what those properties are in March. And then our main meeting is looking well into the future. The ARB will decide what more formal legal action we'll want to take based on sort of previous violations. So that's where we are. Open to questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Clark. Planning Commission, Mr.
No,
Miller.
Mary-
I just have one quick question. You may have said this and it went over my head. The thing that you signed with CSX when they gave you the $4,000 grant,
Yeah.
does that? They're off the hook then for anything above and beyond the 4,000 or?
Yeah, so that was our agreement, which we signed off on as a council. We accepted their grant for 4Gs. Then we also signed off on, you know, being able to access it. So we could apply for that grant again, I'm assuming, but it's still a matter of the ultimate cost. Which is going to be 10 times, I think, with that grant.
I mean, it's their property. Surely legally they can't say, we got $4,000, never again do we have to put a penny into it.
Surely one would think not. But that's what I'd like for us to discuss, because if we're serious about that building and it's becoming significantly dilapidated, the exterior foundation is now starting to crack where the bricks are. So I don't know how much more time that building will have, you know, meaningful.
Okay.
Means Richie Paul is gonna have to.
Yeah. And reaching a certain cost threshold for that work. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Briscoe,
Our planning commission did not meet,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
that's good. Before we get to the treasurer, I know, I like to include everybody in these reports, and I would ask Mr. Heisen if he has a couple of things he needs to talk about.
Well, the Government Service Committee met yesterday and covered a lot of issues. So I'll try to go over just the basic ones real quickly. The budget is a big concern. You know, we kind of got thrown off with some of the, you know, Recovery Act things that's kind of got mixed in there. We'll see if we're fiscally sound, but there's we wanted a couple things from the town, some financial information to be presented monthly, actual expenditures and income, to have that every month. So we can look at that. We'll be looking at that. It'll be 6 months next month. So we want to look at that. We also want to have a motion on the table for expenditures of more than $1,000. And we'll maybe look at that next week. Anything over 1,000 in discretionary spending, not operational, gets reviewed by the town council, because there has been some things that that we didn't know about that, you know, were spent on the town, and some of it's excessive in many people's opinions. So we want to try to make sure we know what's being spent. The website, we want to make a motion or look at that to see if that can be prioritized, and also we'd like to get $5,000 for that to cover the cost of redesigning and employing that website. And we have one of our committee members who's pretty versed in that. She could do a proposal and get a couple proposals for that to improve the website. Maintenance. We came up with a list of activities that need to be performed during the winter, and that can be added on to. But we'd like the town administrator and the maintenance person to begin each week of reviewing the list of activities that could be accomplished during the week. And we welcome that from everybody about things that need to be done during the winter, now that mowing season is over. We looked at the cell tower proposal, and it was about whether to buy out or to lease it, and we recommended leasing it, continue leasing it. And then we looked at the number of grants that have been done, and I looked at the results of some of those grants, and I think we'd like to come up with a way of making sure that grants are there's some oversight of those grants that are before they're acted on or before they're been done, that we look at those and then know the results of those grants. And I think that's about it. So we got some other things, but we didn't really look at the DMV and also human resource policies and procedures, which we'll be looking at in the future.
All right, well, that sounds like things that we can devote a whole lot of, maybe in February's work session too. Yeah. Mr. Payne, did you have anything to add to that?
No, Bill covered it pretty good, and I'd just like to thank everybody on that committee for all their hard work. Working with Matt and Javier and the 6 members on that, they're really into this, and I think you'll see some positive results.
Good. Meredith, do you have anything?
I didn't bring notes with me, but my two, sorry, I apologize, I was expecting it for next week, but our two big projects, hopefully for this month, we're having a power washing party at Canal Basin Square sidewalks and some of the lower areas of the stonework where the information boards are, and then also over at the memorial. And then hopefully, and Matt, I have to set up a meeting with you about this. The other thing we'd like to look at is replacing the paper and some, behind some of those plexiglass information boards where there's been a lot of water damage and stuff like that. So that's what we're working on now.
Good, thank you, appreciate it. Treasurer's report.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, could I go back up briefly on the planning commission side?
Yeah.
They did not meet in January, last week being New Year's, but they had a couple of report out items from a month or 2 months ago that we held in workflow because of this large rezoning. I will have those up on your agenda for next month just to keep them moving on process. One is a long overdue special use permit for the Arts Education Center on the scan land at Hardware Street. Planning Commission reviewed that in November and recommended approval of the SUP. The other is a very small lot, commercial rezoning on Valley Street, number 520, Miss Nina Radley's lot. She had a split zoning, which had some odd history back 20 years ago in council, and was looking to clean that up now. Planning Commission did not recommend approval of that rezoning, lacking detail on it. Ms. Radley has worked on that since the Planning Commission recommendation. But we'll bring both of those up for you next week for their next step. They need their planning, their public hearing and their review by council. On the treasury side, we are halfway through the fiscal year here, which started in July and ends in June. So we're working on our half-year reports for those. The financial report that we delivered tomorrow will show progress to date in all of our revenue and spending categories. Being halfway through the year, you look for a 50% target on all of our revenue and spending. If you find anything unusual, you might expect that halfway through the year, we will have done half of the projects and spent half. We're ahead on both of those. We've earned 54% of our revenue and completed 58% of our spending. The biggest driver of our spending is payroll. The main thing that we do is pay that. And the way the calendar fell, there were 2 3 paycheck months this year. So we've done 15 out of 26 payrolls, not 50% of them. That's a big part of why the spend is ahead. Another is completion of capital projects that we front loaded in the year. Some of the capital spending that you've seen in the first half of the year is finished and won't continue. So we'll work on filling out that budget. On the revenue side, this is the low point in revenues for the year. Less restaurant business in the winter time, less meal tax paid, and that's our biggest monthly revenue line. Things like business license renewals go out right now, and that slug of revenue comes between February, March, and April. Bank franchise tax is paid in May. So we always have a situation in the town budget where December is sort of the low point where some big spending has occurred, but the tail end of our revenues always occur in the springtime. So you'll see that cycle again, and it's not unusual to be a few percent behind spending over revenue at this point in the year. There is still $120,000 available for capital spend on the adopted budget. The largest project that remains outstanding and not complete is a police vehicle replacement. USDA has been helpful, but rather slow in approving the grant and loan package for that. It's the same package that we used a year ago and a similar vehicle purchase. So we're clear on what it is we're looking for, but we're waiting on USDA approval for the funding. Meals tax is on track at $106,000 of revenue over $180,000 expected line. We keep in close touch with our restaurateurs and monitor them being closed even for a week for vacation, renovation, or sick team members. We see a noticeable hit on that with our revenue. So we try to talk with our restaurateurs, do what we can to help them with marketing or anything like that. The parking situation on our agenda is germane to helping the restaurants. And we want to make sure that they have what they need. Looking into line items in more detail, you see things like high fuel prices from this year impacting our spending. It was starting up when we did our budget forecasts in the springtime, but remained higher in the summer and the fall than we expected. We have spent more on fuel than we thought we would. And that impacts both the police and the maintenance budget, about $2,000 more than we had expected to spend at this time this year because of higher gas prices. We can try to see what we can do on fuel efficiency within the fleet, but those are one of the variable costs. I'll be happy to talk with you in more detail once we tighten up these numbers, but it's still in the ninth, fairly early in the month to reconcile everything.
Questions for Matt? Moving on, I don't have anything else to add. Here it is. Usually the second Monday is further down the calendar than today. We've only been a week into January, we're on the second Monday already. So other than the chamber board meeting, I have not had a whole lot of mayoral activity. It's nice to have Mr. Bowling with us in person. Good to see you. Nice to see you. And maybe your voice will sound normal now that you're not on Zoom anymore. But you have anything you'd like to pass on to us at this point?
Just two things I've been working on, the zoning, but also we've been that and what the competition company that the town is paying the plow through the town's code and various design ordinances to incorporate everything into one book. We're now 30% through. 300 plus pages of legalese. We're plotting on. We meet and we on the telephone with somebody who's a lawyer for this company, and I like what she's done so far. So sometime, what do you think, Matt? The summer? Before then, maybe
To pack it up.
Yeah, we should have a product to bring the town's code into the 21st century.
Sounds great.
It's been residing in the 1990s for some time.
Jim, is that something that has to go down to Richmond? As far as the revamping of this?
No. This basically is just bringing the present town code of the town of Scottsville up into the 21st century. What you've really got is a document that was dated mostly from the 1990s, and a lot needs to be changed. But the changes are in the nature of bringing the definitions into line with current state code, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, other questions?
What about revamping the town charter? Do we need to go through Richmond or you with that? And that needs some upgrading.
The town charter actually is a living document, and from time to time it's changed, but that can only be changed through the General Assembly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And some of it's outdated. They don't have staggered elections in there. They have like everybody's now elected at the same time.
No, I think that we amended the town charter to
Oh,
provide.
Well,
See,
change
part of,
the mayor to 4 years.
Yeah, that's been amended.
Oh, yes, okay, but I have one.
see, the problem is that the town code and ordinances are here, there, and everywhere. For a number of reasons, principally expense. And now it's all being brought up to date. The town charter can only be amended through action of the General Assembly. So you don't want to tinker with that so too much. It's a real rigmarole.
Any other questions? Mr. Wallace, you have anything as administrator you'd like to ask?
I think the agenda items stand fine.
Okay, well, let's move on to parking. Get that one out of the way.
I defer to Chief Jenkins has done more of the field work on it than I have.
So December the 23rd, Matt Cody and I met with John Wilson. He's a roadway engineer with VDOT to discuss some of the parking regulations down here on Dallas Street. At our last work session, the council had given us clear direction that they wanted us to look at current curbs, what might need to be painted, repainted, parking signs, if any, those type of things. And I think the biggest thing that we wanted to do is make sure that we, as a town, were in compliance with VDOT's rules and regulations. And you can see in my brief summary of our meeting that, and there is a copy of the town's streetscape. Not sure that this is the final version, but you can see here at the top, public parking spaces was listed at 46 parking spaces for Valley Street. Like I said, John Wilson stated that that VDOT guidelines were just that, they were guidelines. Ultimately, town council has the decision-making power to decide what you want in the town as far as whether it's yellow paint on the curbs, repainted, red paint, purple paint, whatever council prefers is what will happen. Parking signs, John did advise us that additional parking signs that they added with the big P with the circle around it crossed out. He said that there were 2 places that he might recommend that there be additional no parking signs added. And I think I tried to explain it the best that I could here about middle page. 2 additional signs would be placed on existing poles, so no new poles would have to be added. One was just south of the Wegro on the southbound side of the business. There's an existing pole there, right where our Matt's Realty company's at. There's one of those parking signs. It's all supposed to be yellow curb, Crossburg Street yellow curb, and where the white van typically sits out here, there's another existing pole. Maybe put another no parking sign on that with the arrow pointing like right here. Matt's got it pulled up. Put it right there on that existing pole and put the arrow pointing back up the street northbound. So you have the one in front of Matt Holt's business that has the sign pointing south. I think you can barely see it right in there. That arrow points south. So have the other sign pointing north on the same side. Yellow curb paint. Clearly, it clearly expresses what council and what the police department are trying to tell our commuting public and our residents that our expectations are no parking in those areas. There was another no parking sign. I think just adjacent from that, there's a sign across the street that says no parking anytime. Maybe go down the street about where the barber shop's at. There's an existing pole and put another sign pointing up the street, repaint the curbs yellow and put another sign on that pole there that shows pointing up the street, no parking anytime. So it really does lay out clearly the expectations that there's no parking in those areas. I think in front of the barber shop, I think Mr. Heisen, you and I have talked about those two parking spaces there. You had mentioned that. I think that's something that council's gonna have to decide whether they want those two parking spaces there. Originally, it looks like it was yellow paint at one point. I'm not sure, our thought would be, or a recommendation would be just to go back and repaint everything that was yellow, just repaint yellow. Put those couple of signs back up there, those two additional signs, and we will be ready. I think your expectations will be met. I think lastly, with the weather being like it is right now, as cold as it is, it's gonna have to take warmer temperatures to do the painting. Maybe we can have our government services committee come out with us. And Matt and I can walk the committee through what we learned through John Wilson, and maybe our government services committee members have some different ideas or different thoughts.
Yeah, there's some of the side streets I look at too, like say Bird Street. There's no parking, Bird Street, almost all the way to the Presbyterian Church, and I think that's too far. I don't know, how far can you park away from a intersection?
15 feet.
So, but I think that could be like 30 or 40 feet. So I'm wondering if that could be changed so there could be more parking at the Presbyterian Church. And the other one that I've got calls from and talked to people involved with it too is I really do think we need to figure out or make it official that there's no parking on Lindsay Street. There's ever since that Airbnb went there. She's not either informing the clients or whatever, but and there's loading problems there too. But you know, there's there's Airbnb, and then there's Dina's place, and then Kimberly's place, and that's problematic. They all about parking there. So I think there could be a couple signs there that there's no parking on that street. They park right next to the Airbnb, and then if somebody else comes or they load, they can't get out. And there is a designated place for that, but they're not. So I think the town needs to inform that person, the Airbnb person, that they can't park on that street. I think that's a problem.
I was told that that business was given permission to park cars there. I just need clarification. I got a call last week, I think it was on Thursday or Friday of last week, about a vehicle being parked in that parking space there.
And people told me about that too. I've seen it.
And I asked the lady to move, and she did. Willingly. So it was very simple. But how far? So we have the two signs that said no parking on this side of the street at the entrance, right here off the valley.
Right.
But does that woman have permission to let
I
her?
don't think she does. I don't think she does. It's a town street, and you can't park. There's some alleys up in the Clement Street, Lindsay Street up or past Harrison, and none of the people park on those streets unless it's just temporary.
Okay. Would it be worthwhile checking the special use permit for that Airbnb? I wonder if there was anything that went along with the permit. I would look there first for clarification, just because if we approve the permit with additional parking, it would be there.
My thought.
They do already have a special parking place. They got 3 actually. She does.
Right.
My thought, Mr. Heisen, would be if council doesn't want anyone parking in front of that Airbnb, is those no parking signs need to go, you got 2 in the front, and then there will be 2 in the back.
And I think they like that.
So it clearly shows what council's expectations are for that street, that there's no parking on either side of that alleyway there.
Yeah, because it's problematic, and they both Dean and Kimberly have told me about that problem before.
That's it.
That's right there. So and there's no way out of that right there, and it's not real clear. I could see them dropping off somebody there, but then moving their car. Because on the side of the building, they have a parking lot.
We're not able to get further in with this, are we?
No, the
Is
camera
that
doesn't
as
go
far
back.
as
Yeah,
we can
Google
go?
is probably doesn't- yeah.
Anytime I've seen it, and I might not be seeing the same thing you are, I might have just seen it at different times. I mean, I know technically that hill there is a road, but I mean, it's obviously an impassable
It's a path.
road. It's not. They've been pulled so far up that I'm confused about what the problem is Are you saying they're having trouble getting out of that parking lot behind Kimberly's?
You know, they will. There's all kinds of problems. I think you have to ask them, voting is a problem for her too.
But what you're saying is
But
that
like they're
they're
pulled
parking
so
far enough
far
up the street,
up
they're out of
that
the way.
they're past that, you know, where the parking lot comes out and then you pull out to, you know, to get back on.
I think from what I've gotten down there, that is. The signs say no parking,
Fair enough.
and you have a car that's parked back in front of the Airbnb back there. Well, how come we can't park in this alley to unload our stuff for our stores, but yet they can park back here? And I think that's the rub.
Yeah.
I think it's,
Customers get like better too.
and that does seem to be the biggest
Yeah.
rub that I've
It's
been talking to it's consistency. It really is. And I think it's all or none. And if
Mhm.
obviously you can't block up that alleyway there or that roadway.
Yep.
Because Dina has.
Well, if there's a way we could contact the Airbnb owners and let her know about the customers. That they're not parked there. I think it's communication too, I think. And that's the problem. So, you know, a lot of people just assume that they can park there and if they know they can ahead of time, they can park there.
Matt, would you like to talk to the owner of that business and let her know?
I think the three neighbors all have an interest in occasional access for repairs, deliveries, and access back in there. Nobody wants it to be jammed up. What if I don't think they've all three ever sat down together, so we'll try to ask them what they're all interested in. It is town property at Lindsay Street, and we can set the rules for it.
There is a concern with a couple of them too, that Airbnb owners kind of taken over that upper end and is putting, landscaping in Lindsay Street, and I don't think that's right either. I mean, they got a big arch that one was telling me about, and that shrubbery and, if it's a street, and even though it doesn't go anywhere, I don't know. She has a right to do that. That's not her property.
There's a shared interest in a walking path that works.
Yes.
And then all of the property owners and the public being able to.
Right, I won't
do it.
right, it'd be nice, and maybe eventually if there are money, we can take some small steps for a path there.
Right, okay. Try to mediate that.
All I can do right now,
Yeah.
if they're up there, is just ask them.
Yeah.
And there's really not a lot that I can do to encourage them to maybe by towing or anything, so we really make sure that's really what the expectations are. I did talk with Albemarle County's fire marshal's office, and the fire marshal told me that Albemarle was going to all the yellow curbs. And it would be staff recommendation for us to stay with all the yellow curbs. They did talk about the parking signs and some of the places in Albemarle where they don't have the signs along with the yellow curbs, they're stenciling in black no parking in the yellow paint on the curb to really clearly specify no parking. I'm not sure that council wants to do something like that.
I like that better than the signs, to be honest with
Yeah, I
you.
don't like some of the-
There's just so many signs on the sidewalks already. I like the black stencil on the yellow.
So yellow curb.
I mean, just from an aesthetic standpoint, I like that better.
Is that shared? The painted stencil versus, and less sign clutter, but more words down by the curb? We can do it either way, but it's a different maintenance task. We had the same question. Is it beneficial or not to have those words on the curb?
I guess my question is what a motorist would find most visible. The yellow definitely pops. That tells you you're probably not supposed to park there. If you're in a car, are you also going to see, maybe the yellow is enough actually,
I
but
think as soon as you open the door
yeah.
and step out, it'd probably be the first thing you see. I don't know, just personal aesthetic preference. I can go
Yeah.
either way though.
That's fair.
I see the need not to have sign clutter, so that's, I'm really
So
fine either way.
the count, so we're just talking about the two additional signs, not additional posts on where we have indicated there. Would council just like for us to get with government services and do maybe the walkthrough with them before we bring a final recommendation back to council for us to move forward? Sounds like a way to go.
I have a quick question about your map. The Main Street parking. No idea, we had 53 spots. this, what do those spots include? Are those the parking for the church and? Or is that like where you have 53 on Main Street?
Well, this,
Are that the spots in?
this part was done long before I got into the town of Scottsville.
Okay, I thought this was a recent like walkthrough, never mind, okay.
Matt was showing me, like where Victory Hall's at. The parking spaces aren't all necessarily laid out in those spots. Like I tried along Valley Street where they had the little slash marks to count to see if I could count 46 parking spaces north and south. But there were only 30 some. So I don't think they actually had gone in here and marked the specific spaces. One of the things that I think that we have to consider too, is you saw in this write up, the talking points, 18-foot long parking space versus a 20-foot long parking space. Current spaces are 18 foot. So those are the things that council will have to consider before we start to work on, or Cody starts.
And it's I think your presentation has done a good job of explaining the places where the town has discretion. It's not all in the engineering manual. And this shows it. There was this attempt in the concept work on streetscape to indicate what the parking count would be. But the final construction drawings detail a lot of the signs and pipes and hardware that we put in. But the final bit of paint on the parking markings wasn't part of the construction plan. It's cosmetic enough that it wasn't an engineered thing. So the construction drawings don't say where to put the parking lines. And so I can't swear to you that the faded paint that's out there on the street now is what was originally done 20 years ago, or how much it is all moved in between.
I was just curious if like those 53 on Main Street included parking lots, like, you know, by the tavern, by the Canal Basin Square.
Yeah, those are all new parking lots. They didn't exist 25 years ago. So this concept work includes like Canal Basin Square with its parking lot. That's some new spaces which they were counting.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's come a long way.
Yeah. I'm wondering if after this is all done, if we could actually have a map for the public, we could post it downstairs or have a little brochure so people could look at it and say, here, there's parking here, here, and here. Because I think people just don't know that there's lots of parking, but they don't know where to go.
True.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
could have that, like a little map.
that's what I was thinking, because it's like, oh, why do we have a parking problem? We have so much parking.
Right.
Anything else on parking right now? We got a little plan and presenting it down to us. Direction to go at the moment. Yes, sir. Okay.
Chief, let me just, I'm sorry, there's one thing I will say. You could add the parking you can do in the day, major area, another spot where there is parking that it might, I don't know that it needs to be fully like every spot of it, but there's a fair amount of parking that could happen in there that does matter related to some events that we have in town where people can be parked there. That's an easy walk into. That's another thing that would go on with SMAT, because there's a lot of spaces in there that people can park that could be helpful in events that we have when there's the town's very crowded.
I think as I've worked through the town, you know, I've had complaints on Harrison Street, left wheel to curb. Officers are writing warning tickets for folks complaining on windshields. What I called this morning, you know, there are two cars up on, or were on Harrison Street. Parked left wheel to curb. I explained to the lady, look, when you pull in like that, you're actually driving across oncoming traffic to park like that. And when you go out, you have to cross ongoing traffic to come back out to the lane of travel. It's dangerous. Someone could get hurt. She understood it. Boyfriend turned them both around, fixed the problem. Had a gentleman come in last week to my office and talk about Warren Street. The small homes as you pull in off of Scottsville Road. So I went and had a conversation with the young man in the house, and he's taking care of it. And so it's trying to educate some folks. But I truly do believe once we figure out your expectations are, and we get it clearly marked. I think Valley Street is a big undertaking for us. It's not gonna be me, it's gonna be coded. I tried to figure that out first, and then the side streets, I get Lindsay Street, Lindsay Road or Street or whatever that alley is. It's been a problem since I've been in the town, it was, 12 and a half months now. So that one certainly needs it. But all of our side streets need refreshed with paint, and I mean, it's gonna be a big job.
Mhm.
But the biggest complaints I get are Valley Street, Harrison, and Warren Street. Those have been the three biggest complaints that I've gotten as far as parking.
Mhm.
So. But, thank you.
Okay.
All right, item 3D, back to the rezoning. Principles related to the project, let's, answer any questions you have, but basically we're just opening it up for discussion, but just to make sure everybody is aware of a technicality that occurred in the legal notice that was placed regarding the public hearing for next Monday. The
Tuesday, yeah.
tax. That information, is that correct, for the plant was, there was a typo, instead of being the number 130, it was number 135. Mr. Bowling has researched this, and we have talked about it. It's not like anybody knew what the tax map number was. And secondly, everybody knows that it said 800 3rd Street, but everybody knows 800 3rd Street is the fact of the plant. So there should be no confusion about what's being discussed in the public hearing. And with that being the case, our legal counsel thinks that it is not going to be a major problem to go ahead with the public hearing, even though that one typo is in official notice. So, if it stands right now, we will have our public hearing on Tuesday, beginning 17th, correct?
Mhm.
But right now, this is what we're doing tonight on this item is just take it nice and easy and simple, and anybody that wants to make a comment, ask a question.
Mr. Mayor, we have a number of technical experts available to help with various aspects of the project. Of course, the applicants, the crew from the fire department is present. We have utility experts on the line and county housing staff on the line. So those are areas where if your questions go beyond the staff report, we can get more detail. Those folks are also happy to share more on background about their work. I appreciate Ms. Hyland here as well for regional housing work outside of Albemarle. So we'll do the best we can to be of service here this evening.
So I'm sure everybody has a question or two or more on their mind, and everybody's here to answer your questions to the best that they can. So feel free to raise your hand and you will be recognized.
Mr. Lynn has unmuted on the utility. Could he start off by providing some water and sewer background?
Sure.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Also good to see you, Mr. Bowling. We appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jeremy Lynn, Director of Engineering with the Albemarle County Service Authority. And with me is Alex Morrison, one of our senior civil engineers. Wanted to take some time tonight to speak on a couple of items, starting with some background information. The Albemarle County Service Authority provides public water and sewer service to areas of the county, the communities of Crozet and Red Hill, and also the town of Scottsville. We currently provide service to more than 22,000 customers. We purchase water from the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority. With respect to Scottsville, the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority operates the James River Road tank, the Totier Creek Reservoir, and both the water and the sewer treatment plants. Rivanna also operates close to 1.5 miles of water main in Scottsville. The Service Authority currently owns the water storage tank on Route 795 and maintains nearly 7 miles of water mains in Scottsville. All water customers in the town of Scottsville are customers of the Albemarle County Service Authority, as we have a total of 288 meters. I think it's important to note that the water treatment plant has a capacity to treat up to 250,000 gallons of water a day. Our current daily production ranges from 25 to 50,000 gallons per day. So over the last 10 to 15 years, the Albemarle County Service Authority has invested more than $3 million in the town of Scottsville to make improvements to the water distribution system. In 2009, we replaced the water main along Poplar Spring Road. In 2012, we replaced the water main along Confederate Street. In 2013, we installed a second water feed into the downtown area along Hardware Street. Jackson Street was replaced in 2014. The water storage tank on Route 795 was recoated in 2019. And most recently, the water main along East Main Street from Ferry to Canal was replaced in 2020. We've also financially participated in both streetscape projects in the town of Scottsville, including replacements of portions of water mains and water services along both Valley Street and East Main Street. Looking ahead, design efforts are already underway to replace the water main along a portion of James River Road from the filter plant to the intersection of Warren Street. We are also planning to replace the water main along Warren Street, the lower portion of Hardware Street, and then several streets in the downtown area west of Valley Street. This project is already programmed into our capital improvement program, with construction anticipated to begin in fiscal year 2025. The final construction schedule will be dependent on our ability to secure the necessary easements. This project alone is anticipated to cost more than $5 million. In addition to water system improvements, we've also had a couple of technology initiatives that have been installed and initiated to assist the customers in Scottsville. All customers in Scottsville have smart meters, which means we have the ability to monitor remotely and to alert customers in the event of a water leak. We also have SCADA on our tanks and pump stations. So if we see a fire event, we're able to notice pressure system or systems in the water pressure drop and tank levels drop from our remote facilities. So getting to the gist of the meeting tonight, I wanted to speak specifically to the Scottsville tire plant redevelopment that is under consideration. For any new private development, the Service Authority is involved in the review process to determine if system capacity exists and to review and approve any proposed water and sewer infrastructure that will be dedicated to the Albemarle County Service Authority. During this process, this is when we typically determine if required fire flows can be achieved by the developer, and plans are not approved until all conditions are met. During construction of the project, the ACSA has a construction inspector assigned to the project to ensure that the utilities are installed according to the plans and according to our construction specifications. I will note that the Albemarle County Service Authority operates under a growth pays for growth policy. In this case, and in all cases, it is the developer's responsibility to cover the costs associated with their development related to any necessary water or sewer improvements. This development of 205 residential units is estimated to increase the system demand by about 50,000 gallons per day. So if you remember, we're still at 25 to 50,000 gallons a day. They're going to double that, most likely, to 100,000 gallons a day. Our plant capacity is still upwards of 250,000 gallons a day. A little bit of history on the Scottsville tire plant. The Albemarle County Service Authority has only ever served this plant with domestic water purposes. We have not in the past provided fire protection from the public water system. The fire protection provided to the plant was always done by a private water storage tank and a pond on the site. And this was confirmed by recent conversations with the Scottsville Fire Department members. So getting towards the end of our talk, and then we'll open up the floor to questions if you have any. Our office has not been advised by the developer of what the required fire flows are for this site. That will need to be determined by the state fire marshal's office. We have, however, performed preliminary modeling efforts to determine what fire flows might be available for this site. Based on these preliminary modeling efforts, it's likely that this project or this property will need to supplement the public water system with the previously mentioned private alternate sources of the pond and the water tank to meet those anticipated fire requirements. All of this could be ironed out at the site plan stage of the project. Recently, a couple of issues were raised by the Scottsville Fire Department, expressing concerns of the system's ability to provide fire protection. We have been working closely with them, most recently performing a test along James River Road last week with the fire department personnel on the site to witness the tests. And we're also committed to scheduling a test along East Main Street as time permits to further demonstrate to the fire department what the system can provide. We greatly value the partnership we have in the fire department, and we want to make sure we have their confidence in the system. And with that, Alex and I are welcome to attempt to answer any of your questions you might have.
Yeah, I'm curious. So the test, was it on James River Road, you said?
Yes, sir.
What was the result of that test?
So we were able to open the fire hydrant fully, and for about 15 minutes, we had over 800 gallons a minute flowing from that one fire hydrant and saw minimal residual pressure drop in the system in that area.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite the fire department folks that are here just to see if they agree with everything this gentleman said, and do they think that we have the capacity to handle emergencies with the water? Mike, and your crowd want to answer or question?
Any questions, Jeff? No, I think Jeremy did a good job of explaining that, and we definitely want to get with them and do the testing down East Main where we've had problems before. They say they corrected some issues since we had 2 fires in town. With a valve they found that was I don't want to speak on their behalf, but it was not working correctly. That has been circumvented, they say. So we'd like to definitely get with them, do the testing and stuff before we go and say anything further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Will that testing be done prior to Tuesday?
We typically perform our hydrant testings on Thursdays. We would need to verify the temperatures on Thursday to make sure we weren't creating a hazardous situation if we were to put a lot of water on the roadway. But we would welcome the opportunity to meet with the fire department if that schedule allows.
I think. Although they're talking, I mean, if the schedule allows, I as far as the public hearing goes, having all the information would be best. If it could.
He was just reminding me, or wanted to let you know, the test we're talking about wouldn't have anything to do with the power plant property. We're talking about testing down East Main, where they've replaced the mains down through East Main, like they go down towards the laundry.
I see.
We've had issues down that direction before, so.
Right. So this test is the one that would be impacted by the plant, the redevelopment.
I'm sorry, sir.
The test has been done.
So
I don't
the
think any
test
testing has been done up on Bird Street at all. They don't have, like you said, they only have, domestic water running up to Bird Street right now.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So-
We don't have any fire hydrants along Bird Street to be able to test to provide that information to the council.
I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood then. Are there plans? You said that it would fall on the developer to make the necessary improvements to the water. Would that be one of the things, fire hydrants, would a fire hydrant be put up on Bird Street?
Absolutely. The developer would be required to extend a public main all the way along Bird Street out to their development. And then those plans would include both domestic purposes, fire sprinkler systems, and fire hydrants that would all be in the area of the tire factory. That work is typically, those plans are typically reviewed at the site plan stage, not necessarily at the rezoning.
Would that be something y'all want to comment on, Echelon or Southern?
I guess I would ask the question to Jeremy, would it be possible for a developer to start swinging hammers and building out a building without a Albemarle County Service Authority getting to review and approve the plans?
You would not, under normal circumstances, you would not be able to get a building permit. I don't believe you can get a building permit without approved site plan. We would not issue an approved site plan until you ensured the required fire flows could be achieved by the proposed plans.
A good example of this is at the Tiger Fuels Market, where the groundbreaking will be soon. That has an approved site plan. The plan carries the ACSA certification that the pipes there and where they place their hydrants will be adequate both for emergency service and the routine service, that the pipe is big enough for the number of bathrooms and the car wash that they have. And our planning commission reviews that site plan, but it has signature blocks for VDOT, fire marshal, county stormwater, and other agencies. And no building permit is issued until all of those departments' engineers are satisfied that the arithmetic on fire flow, traffic, and so on is satisfied. Planning commission needs those outside engineers' expertise because we don't have it on staff.
Right, but that work wouldn't start until a permit was approved.
Right.
But you're also saying that it's not gonna, construction's not gonna happen until it's approved. Something.
Right. So there's a little bit of developing the information gradually that to make a rezoning decision, you need a high level of information of, is there enough water in our system? Are we approving something that's infeasible? But the detail of where exactly is the fire hydrant going to go comes later at the site plan stage.
Other questions from council?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Who's next up?
I might talk about emergency responses with respect to Chief Jenkins's time and the gentleman from the fire department who are here. We had a number of questions at the public hearing related to adequate emergency services from this rezoning and what we might anticipate, but what might be done in the project to make the best of the situation or mitigate the impacts. I might yield the floor to them if they'd like to share.
So I'm not sure what questions council has. For me, much like the water flow up to the plant. I heard Philip, I think it was Philip, right? I heard the man say that water right now is 25 to 50,000 gallons. And that was going to double when this 205 apartments come in. As you can see with our monthly report on call for service, I believe, based on my 35, almost 36 years of experience, that our call for service are going to double as well. I'm not sure if the calls for service will double immediately. If the calls for service, I'm not sure what the plan is. Is it going to be built out all one time? Is it going to be phased in? I'm not exactly sure. During the building process, you're going to have security there of some sort. To secure the building site itself during the building process, tools, everything that goes along with building complex. I believe that our calls for service going to increase. I believe they're going to double. And I strongly recommend that council consider, part-time, full-time police officer. I'm not sure if it's that first year upon completion, or if it's going to be at some point after the completion is done. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I haven't heard or seen a timeline. But I will tell you from my experience, I watched the growth in Albemarle County, all of those complexes we built, their calls for service. And it's not just police, but also safety, fire, rescue, and police. When people move in, they're going to expect services. And Mayor, you've worked in public safety. People expect it. When they have a need, they're going to call. And most of the time, if it's not going to fall under their umbrella, it's going to fall to the police for sure. They come up with some type of a solution, whatever problem they have. That's what I believe. Much like the increase in the water will double, I believe our calls for service are going to double at some point. And I think we need to strongly consider what's that look like for public safety for the town of Scottsville. For me and my department, I think we need to start looking at part-time, full-time position. Not sure exactly at what point we consider doing that, but we need to really consider doing it.
Zach and I were talking the other day, and he made a very good point. I think that was on our conversation. I'm trying to
I sure hope it was.
remember who made the good point. We have had a very big uptick in tool type theft lately. I mean, it seems like there's been between the cemetery and, a whole bunch of other places. If that is the recommendation, I feel like it needs to happen during the building, even if the calls for service don't necessarily double until after a time, after everybody's moved in. I think a big risk would be the possible tool theft that's been happening lately. If there's a construction site at night, when they all kind of pack up and go home, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of equipment and vehicles and stuff like that will be left on site as the building happens.
So you remember back, we were talking about coverage, and when we're not here, that mutual aid between Albemarle and those response times, how often are they going to be down here during those gap areas? We could consider, not me, but council could consider, we have the security one in town. We can certainly, or the contractors could certainly contract them during some of the nighttime hours to help secure that through that development phase. I just suggest that council, once that development is done, how do we augment those increased calls for service? It's not going to happen all at one time.
I think that, like I say, it's going to be 3-4 years down the road before the first tenant moves in. If that's soon, then you can start looking at things really closely as 10 tenants move in. When you got 20 tenants, okay, picked up any of them and kind of, I don't want to say play it by ear, but keep an eye on the statistics as the number of new residents, the number of calls for service starts to increase, then we can certainly talk about adding to our force.
We have a part-time position now, that is admin that I use for policies in my sergeant position. It's an hourly. Do we look at making that full-time position? Do we keep that position and add just another part-time position to help kind of offset some of it for the first couple of years? I think maybe that's the best way. Because it really seems like that traffic seems to be some of the biggest concern. But what I've heard about residents, that would help me during the day when I'm not in the town or, academy board meetings and things like that. That person could still be in the town and help address some of those calls for service issues, and we don't have to really think about, the insurances and things like that.
Developer wants to make clear. You okay?
Just wanted to supplement what Chief Jenkins is saying. We enjoy a good working relationship with, the public safety components in every community we work in. One of the things that's sort of an interesting byproduct is that we invest heavily in cameras in both our common areas and our exterior elements. A lot of times they actually surveil the public right of ways, and sometimes we get calls from the police department for our footage, some sort of incident that happened in the street and such. And of course, we're happy to collaborate. That in and of itself really helps mitigate, petty crime, theft. People know that we surveil our properties. It's actively done. We actively manage those cameras, and that's all. But I think it starts with a collaborative approach with public safety, between property management. I know in our complex in Shenandoah County, we actually get a monthly email showing a report of calls for service. To date, there's been 0. We get those, but occasionally there was one late last month in Culpeper where somebody burned their breakfast and opened the door and flooded the hallway with snow and set off the fire alarms, and we had a fire alarm response. Pretty typical, low grade. I can't really think of any serious incidents that have happened in the last 2 to 3 years across our portfolio. But humans are humans, and these things happen, so we want to prepare for the appropriate public safety response. But I think that really does start with just the collaborative relationship with law enforcement, which we've done with all of our properties.
Does Shenandoah. So the town of Scottsville, one of my biggest challenges was the town of Scottsville has not had another development this size in the town for me to be able to compare calls for service. This will be the first. So I guess my concern is the jurisdictions that you're talking about, do they have another location that they can compare the calls for service to? Or is that the first in that locality? Like this would be the first for the town of Scottsville?
Just anecdotally on top of my head, all of the places that we develop have other multifamily communities of varying sizes, some bigger than ours, some smaller than ours. But yeah, to your point, I think
I don't mean that.
no, you're good. You're good. The law enforcement already is working with multifamily communities, so that's a very good point. We're sort of prepped for that, and we're another star in that constellation, if you will. We've all sort of been grappling with the fact that this is a relatively, you do have rental properties here, of course, but this is of a scale that, gives us all pause, and we're trying to figure that out. But
I don't have to pause. I just need to make sure that we're in a position as the police department that we can respond to their community's needs. As I said before, when you have people, they're going to expect public services, period. And what I don't want to get to a position, me personally, and our department, is to get in a position where my officers can't respond in an appropriate time. We have to rely more heavily on county police to come in, and then we're looking at longer response times, and then that customer satisfaction starts to dwindle. Right now, we enjoy a very, very good relationship with our community in the town because we are so responsive. I'm not saying that we can't do it with these additional 205 people. I just suggest that we really need the council consider what could potentially be the impact on public safety. I think it's going to be an increase, but I'm not sure what it's going to look like. Are they not? That may not necessarily be major crimes. They may just be quality of life issues, barking dogs, noise complaints, and things like that, but they all take time.
Now, when we get this today, that they were all that full, still, going to go
with, start to finish construction, of the graders, talking about what it's going to be thought that it's a phase. So it won't be a phase project. I think you made a remark a few months ago, so it's not the third tenant that was there. You would not do it in phases, it would be all the time.
Yes, Mr. Payne, thank you for, I meant to address that, sometimes my memory slips. With Chief Jenkins, yes, just to clarify, we are planning to build the entire project at once and bring them all online. And just given the nature of the site, we feel that's less destructive, long term for, frankly, Scottsville as a community and the tenants that would have moved in a hypothetical phase situation.
Thanks.
The question for Chief Jenkins, do you have any feel for if there was a new officer, whether it's part-time or full-time, I guess, in kind of a budget, from a budget perspective, how much do you think would be allocated to this project? And I was trying to do the math in my head, thinking about the county's population. If they have 10 officers on duty at all times. Do you think there's a way to kind of deduct what the burden would be that's caused by this project, these 200 residents? And I guess where I'm going with it is not, I'm just curious, is there some sort of, small annual contribution that the tire factory could make to recognize its, burden on, the additional, because obviously it's not one officer for every 200 people. So I'm just trying to kind of frame it in that context.
Well, Albemarle is 1.5, I don't think they've changed it. 1.5 police officers per 1,000 population.
Okay.
Okay,
That's something.
and
Wait, say that again, or, well,
1.5 police officers per 1,000.
yeah,
Now, you go into cities, there are more. Some cities have 2 to 2.5 officers per 1,000, depending on the jurisdiction.
Okay.
Our town right now, about per capita would, I guess you would probably say could handle it, right? That's where you're going.
That's actually, this is an education mission for me. I don't have the answer in mind, but that's what I'm trying to figure out.
And I think some projects do, I'm not sure of the technical term of a pilot payment of lieu of taxes to supplement services that are caused by said project. So those are options that are potentially available if we can create a direct, even a dash line between demand and need in this kind of situation. So
That would be something.
yeah, I mean, those are all options that are available for discussion now or frankly in the future. For some reason, if the project is fortunate enough to be approved, it gets built, and for some reason is causing some unusual, heretofore unexpected demand on whatever public service, I think it's always on the table to come back as a community without ever to say, what's happening here? How do we address this? Another point that was brought up by Chief Jenkins about the construction piece, I think that's a very valid concern. Knock on wood, thankfully, we've enjoyed several years of not really any material incidents like that. One of the things we like about the site is that it is, bermed, fenced, so at least during construction, we can maintain that perimeter. Somebody would have to be pretty ambitious to breach that, and then into a locked building, into a locked job box, into there's no accounting for the ambition of a determined thief.
I was talking about Bird Street also. I mean, we've had some determined full theft.
So we also surveil during construction. There's cameras we put up. It won't stop at that, but it's usually resolved pretty quickly.
On the officer per resident, I don't know if you're aware, but we had submitted a application to the county for a TIF, which is basically tax increment financing. So we're proposing that they shift a big chunk of revenue that would be generated by the redevelopment. So the property is assessed for X now, and after the project's done, it would be assessed for Y. And so that additional revenue that would be generated from the project right now, it all goes to the county. And so we're basically proposing that they ship. What we've asked for is $2.5 million over 10 years back to the town. And one of the items on the list is public safety. And so I was just trying to frame this in the context of, are we gonna get any pushback on, you know, if we include that as one of the, if the town includes that as one of the funding expenses, an additional officer, or could we justify that it's spread out across, you know, the rest of the population?
Mr. Bristow, that's a question.
Yeah, I want to come back to the tip question, because that's a secondary thing. This really is more of the chief, but it's also a comment. Then I'm going to go back to conversation that you and I actually had a couple of weeks ago. When we think of the issue of the apartments, we're not thinking about the apartments in a vacuum. We really are talking about two options here. We're talking about, now that there's a new owner of the factory, Southern has made it clear that if the apartments don't happen, they're going to turn it into an industrial park. And the industrial park option has been fully talked about. It's been fully explained in terms of at least many conversations that I've had. And so I asked Chief a couple of weeks ago. So when we were talking, I asked the Chief, I said, can you give me a comparison between what the Scottsville police will need to do if it's a industrial park versus if it's the apartment complex? And so Chief, if you could comment on that.
You know, you're almost comparing apples and oranges. I think you're still going to need the additional resource, but I'm not sure that there are going to be the businesses in there, but they're operational during the daytime, most of the time, depending on what goes in there, right? All of them are going to require some kind of a response. The people, so you have the 205 apartments, then you have the 36 homes that are going to go on the hill as well. I'm not sure when they're all supposed to be built. But that's going to be a workload demand. Sure. The businesses, if that's the option that the town council goes with, they're still going to require resources on public safety. Police, I'll just talk about police. For sure, those businesses have needs as well during the day, during the nighttime when they're closed. I don't know that it'll be the same type of expense on manpower that it would for the 205. I'm not sure.
You seem to think when we talked that the apartments would be a lot more because it's the people. The other thing I want to be clear is we're actually talking about the buy right option. So it's not the town's choice, so to speak. It's the option that the owner of the property would have. And so as we talk about it, I think it's helpful for people to know, both in the public and also that we talk about as town council, that number one, what's been presented to us for the special use permit is to do the apartments. What's been made clear also is that the thing that would happen if the apartments don't happen would be the industrial park. And so I just want to make sure, and I want to just bring that out. I'm going to actually ask Charlie if he would comment on that, only because as we talk about it, I think it's helpful that we frame it really in what the options that we're being, that we understand. So I'm only going on what I was told. You could comment on what, if the apartments didn't happen.
Sure, I'm happy to, and apologize, it's a little bit repetitive for all the council who was here last meeting, but I said the same, but we are investing in that property, and the backup plan, so to speak, apartments doesn't include this industrial development from this 180,000 square feet. It's viable in real estate with a very viable building that needs some sprucing up and the lights turned back on to be industrial space. And that'll work very well. I think I may have quoted to some of you who have asked me individually, or maybe it was here at the meeting last time, I can't remember, that I thought that industrial rents are somewhere around $4 square foot for a space like that. Up inside Crossroads, they're $16 to $18 a square foot because it's highway accessible more than this site is. I've since talked to a commercial realtor who sent me something about their business, and he said $3.50 to $4 a foot is what he thinks it's for. And that works for us. It'll be a very viable, industrial project. It will be probably collecting smaller tenants. We're not going to get manufacturing, the building's not suitable for manufacturing kind of tenant, but storage, small contractor, mid-sized contractor that do business regionally. Is very likely. I'm happy to answer any questions.
How many workers do you estimate if you had that, either 50 or 40, 80?
It's really hard to say. I don't have a good feel for exactly what type of businesses would end up there, because there's such a wide range of what could go there. My hunch is that it's mostly people who use it as a home base for their business who do work elsewhere. So they come in and the commercial realtor I was speaking to said, hey, that's a perfect site for somebody who at the solar panel company who wants a place to store a whole bunch of bulky stuff. Come in and get it every day in the morning, drive out, do their job in the daytime, and come back and bring their work vans back in the evening. That's only one example. It's zoned for a lot of different types of users.
Because they had mentioned, I think the last time, well, there's really a need for light industry, and there's a need for work in this area. And I like the idea of having some sort of light industry, some working 50, 60 people with machine parts or computer parts. So I know there's need for those kind of things. I know it's not going to be General Motors or anything, but I think we need workforce here. You need work here, and I'd like to explore that more.
I don't think he's talking about one company.
Oh, really?
The business with 60 employees. He's talking about 30 companies with 3 or 4 employees each.
I think that's more likely.
Oh, yeah, that could be a problem.
It's an
Those guys, to me, those guys are gonna come in the morning, get your stuff and leave and work somewhere else.
They're not gonna work
and
there.
then come back and pack up.
Is that
and
what
go
you're
home
thinking?
tonight.
They're not going to work there. They're going to be just in and out.
Well, yeah, I think that's most likely. There's all kinds of scenarios that could
They're
come.
not gonna live in town and community and contribute to the economy other than maybe filling up the tank next door on the way home and get the pizza at the beaches. Whereas if you have people living in apartments down there, they're gonna shop.
I never called once.
I called it. Hi.
Participate in the churches.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, going off of what Bill was saying, I think it actually would contribute a lot to the community. We talk about wanting to help our small businesses in Scottsville, and somehow we have really not focused on anything but Valley Street, which has a lot of viable, wonderful small businesses that, everybody should be supporting, and that's great. But we could really support small businesses by having a storage site. If, somebody is running, is a contractor, or somebody's running a lawn and garden, like a landscaping service out of their house. If this is a small business that they have, that they're running out of their home, and they've got 2 riding mowers and a push mower, and they're, doing it with their brother-in-law, because that's what they can fit in their garage, but suddenly they have a place to have 10 riding mowers and, a whole bunch more equipment, maybe hire another 5 or 6 guys and really expand their small businesses, whether that's construction, whether it's, landscaping. I don't know enough about any of these businesses to even pick other ones, but I'm sure that there are. That is also supporting small business in Scottsville. I mean, it's not necessarily to say, oh, these guys aren't contributing at all. I mean, this could be their opportunity to hire more people and give local folks in Scottsville a job.
You weren't here when the plant closed in 2009. The last 90 people that worked there, at the end of the day, they were all Buckingham, put down in Nelson County to go home.
No, I understand that, but we already said that that's not what it's going to be. One plant that services it. It could be people All right,
They're
and-
all clear. All the owners of these businesses aren't just gonna come here and start a business over there because they're unsleeved. Granted, they already have businesses and they live in other counties. Let me ask you before.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest benefit to our businesses down here is people who live here. It's people who go to Baines for coffee. It's people who go shopping at Farmstead. And I'm kind of describing myself, so I apologize. But, you know, the people who benefit our businesses down here, the people who eat at the tavern, who drink beer at the brewery, who buy their groceries at Farmstead, who grab a sandwich at Baines, and regular foot traffic. And so, I mean, feet on the street is what's going to help these businesses more. I agree that like some people who come in and out and buying a pizza, that's not a bad thing. Hear that? But, you know, when CSX brings in 4 van loads of guys and they do big work down there, you should see them doing like the spring cleanups. They'll bring 4 big school buses in of guys for the day. They're down there doing their calisthenics. These are like big stretches in the morning. It's really kind of cool to watch. They got on that. But then they go at the end of the day. They're gone. And so if you want long-term investment in our businesses, and this council has worked for the last 5 years identifying this as a priority, that we want people living in town. Not a single action this body has taken in our comprehensive plan or in our small area plan has ever identified that site as anything but a mixed-use residential commercial site. No one has said that we want light industry back there because we know there's not a value to it.
But
And so that's my conclusion, right? That's where the greater value is to these businesses.
we are talking about Scottsville as if it's about to collapse. I eat at Amici's 2 or 3 times a week when I'm working and I don't feel like cooking or whatever, literally 2 or 3 times a week. I eat at the Bateau at least once a month. I eat at the Chinese restaurant 2-3 times a month. Every time I go in to Amici's, and you know, I'm a big girl, you know, there's a table here and a table here, and I'm going sideways to get between it. It's not empty. Baines can't handle more traffic. I mean, honestly, if you come in on a Saturday, you're waiting 15 minutes easily for your coffee or your food. And it's not a matter of we need more employees. We couldn't handle more employees. The space that we have is the space that we have. The machine only makes a certain amount of drinks at a time. We genuinely would not be able to provide the service that people expect from us if our clientele increased. The businesses are thriving, and we're speaking about them as if this apartment complex goes up or everything is shutting down. That's not the case. Also, we have these 36 homes going up. We have the Mink Creek project that is in the works. That's going to be another 28 houses. Blenheim by right, whether something happens there with another SUP or doesn't, I mean, by right, that's another 50 homes. Growth is coming regardless. And we are not going to stand or fall based on this apartment building. I mean, we need help, but you know.
I kind of want to go back to what Chief about the initial issue, but I was curious, is there any data from some of your colleagues in Charlottesville about service calls for apartments and what kind they are? I know this will be like a rural apartment, but are there more service calls for apartments because people are tight together, or are there less because they're transient? I just wondered if there's anything about, I mean, like in our neighborhoods around here, this, or any service call, my neighborhood, but
If we had an analyst for the town, we could do some comparisons.
but you can't ask people up there, like the policeman up there, it's like, you got some apartment buildings up there.
I can tell you what I've seen over my years of working there.
Oh,
I've watched Albemarle County go from a community of 92,000 people with 86 police officers when I started. That county now is growing at approximately 1,500 people per year.
I know.
I've watched a department grow from 86 officers to now 165-ish, 30 civilian employees. I've watched apartment complexes go up straight across from the police department. I watched I won't call them out by name, but I watched the apartments go up from the police department. Beautiful apartments. And they were supposed to be homes or apartments for college kids, right? See, the transition, for kids coming in and out of school. Then the kids didn't fill them up. So they got empty apartments, what are they gonna do? They're gonna fill them with somebody else. And then over the years, they're still nice apartments, but the calls for service, I mean, you're gonna watch the calls for service go there. Quality of life calls for service for sure. You've got the domestics, you've got the larcenies, you've got everything else that people living.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be there. And I support growth. I really do. And I'm not against it one way or another. Whatever our council decides, I support it 100%. I work for you. But I worry about our community and what their expectations are of the police department. And I just want to make sure that we can meet those expectations. That's all. I wish I had an analyst where I could pull the data, but we don't have it.
I guess I want to come back to sort of the town issues and revenue. You know, I know we have businesses in town that do well, but we also know that we have vacant storefronts, underutilized buildings, and those are not going to get filled. Businesses are not going to come in unless there's foot traffic. The bus depot, that plan has been in abeyance ever since the guy bought it. We have none of those things are gonna trip over until we have more people, and we're also not, and more services coming. I mean, it's just happening, you know, more service is going to be needed. And so my position with this is that I want to make an investment in this town. We've identified that we want it to grow, and grow appropriately. And that's what this conversation is all about. And with the permit that's in front of us, we've got $200,000 coming our way for roads. We rejected a grant a couple years ago for road improvements along Bird Street, included sidewalks, because it was going to cost too much money, and we didn't know what was happening with the factory in Bird Street. We've got $2.5 million potentially coming out of the county, which is all for public safety and infrastructure, all of which is going to be happening anyway because there's going to be truck traffic over there. So we're going to be paying for roads. We're going to be paying for more services. And for my money, if I'm looking at the budget, if I'm trying to solve a budget problem, I want the plan that A, is bringing more people to town, and 2, that actually has a funding stream to address or in part solve, right? Because you solve problems with money around here. So you can put money.
Or 100,000.
No, it's both. Or it's 2.5 million.
There's no,
If the 100,000
no-
isn't approved.
no, flip that. It's 100,000 if the 2.5 million isn't approved. If the county comes back and says no to the TIF, I mean, there's no guarantee they're gonna say yes to that.
Yeah, I still stand on voting for this. Because I'd rather take the gamble here on 2.5 million or 100,000 than a guaranteed 0.
One of the things, oh, sorry.
So,
Yeah, so just to follow, because I think you make a really good point there. First, you've made a bunch of good points. One is the town's not dying, you know, there's a lot of things happening that are good in the town. There's businesses are here, there's success that people are having. And Matt, maybe you might address the issue on the TIF, because if we said, is the TIF ready today? It's not ready today to know whether the county would approve it or not. There's a time frame in terms of how long it takes the TIF to take place. And we can vote and say, okay, we're gonna vote next week or a month from now or whatever we vote. Or we could wait till a TIF is actually figured out. So I've been asking Matt, how long does it take the TIF, or where are we at on the TIF process?
The applicant also applied to Albemarle County's Economic Development and Housing offices working together on this. They applied last week with their TIF paperwork. It's a fairly straightforward application. The county has done at least 2 similar projects that I'm aware of where there was an investment in housing that they thought was strategic, and they made these tax abatement grants to help the project succeed and provide community goods. I know of 2 good comparable projects. I I think if it's a high priority, 4 months of staff work on their part is doable. But I hesitate to promise anything faster than that. We've seen especially legal review for the county take a while on things like the fire department's boundary adjustment or town cooperation that we've had to do.
Yeah, and just so I follow up and say, I'm not saying that means we have to wait 4 months. What I'm saying is that there are two processes that happen. One process is what the county's doing. The other process is our timing. And so the timing of the two are important that we make sure that we think about this. The other thing I would say in the bigger picture, we're really talking about two different ideas for the town. So we're really talking, and maybe it's helpful to take a step back and think about it. And both are workable. So it's not like it's one or the other. You know, I think, Zach, one of the things you make a point, and I think it's a good one, the trajectory the town has been on for the last 5 years has taken us to the point where we actually have a viable proposal that is really future oriented, that really says, where should the town be 10 or 15 years from now? The way you would get there is by adding the population. On the other hand, having been on council 12 years, we've been desperate to see this old factory that's been out of use be put back to use. And the good part about it is either way that's going to happen. The factory, we're absolutely being told one way or the other. So Bird Street is going to have traffic problems either way. I'm going to say that one more time. Bird Street is going to have traffic problems in either one of these issues. The question is, what is the better vision for the town? Is the better vision for the town a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 building, or a $40 million building? A building that's had $60 million worth of assets put into it, where in the end, it creates an enormous opportunity for the town to plan for the future? Or are we doing something that aids industrial use and gets the factory back to service? It's not a bad thing to do that. It's not bad to have that industrial building put back into service. Again, if this would have been 6 or 7 years ago, we would have been happy to do that as a town because we didn't have any other options. Now, again, it's really a question of, do we take care of current needs and allow this industrial building to be put back into use with the repairs that it would take? And you can find out, I've had conversations both with Southern and with Echelon in the timing that it would take for the factory to be turned into industrial park or to be turned into apartments. So the question really is, what's better for Scottsville? Is it better for Scottsville to grow and use this, I would say, this really interesting, exciting opportunity to see the growth take place? The good thing is that it's actually not happening like that. It doesn't happen that way. Even going back to Chief, we're talking about several years that the town would have to address whatever we do, either way. One that's shorter in terms of it goes to the industrial park. So I guess my question, I'm going to come back to you guys at Echelon. Is there anything you want to comment related to the TIF part of it? Because that's a significant issue. And the timing of it does matter related to us having informed decision. But on the other hand, it's also a significant, I mean, $40 million building is a big deal versus that would be the biggest asset that's in the town. It already is the biggest building in the town, and it was a source of 300 jobs. And back to the TIF, what would y'all have to say about the TIF?
Sure, I'll give some thoughts and Randy come after. So first I want to point out that it's personally, I think it's really great that the TIF concept and our dialogue with the county really came from feedback from the planning commission, town council, from the citizens. You know, people have talked about the fiscal impact, inadequacies of this project because of the town's taxation structure or lack thereof. And it was really those comments and in collaboration with the town manager where we frankly started a dialogue that we've never had before, where we go to a county and say, would you be willing to give up a significant stream of revenue for a decade that frankly you don't really have to do to benefit the town, and we've been surprised by their friendly and enthusiastic response. So we love working on interesting projects that have meaningful impacts. We've done that for 20 years. It's what wakes us up in the morning, gets us excited. And the fact that this came from essentially feedback from you all, from the planning commission, from the citizens, even the opposition, kind of warms our heart. We have a mechanism in motion that really has come as a result of public collaborative process, and that's great. We think the town should benefit fiscally from this, and as Mr. Quick noted in a couple of meetings ago, where he brought up some of the projects we've done, the towns do benefit fiscally from it, and it's significant. And the fiscal impact of a $50 million asset is significant. So for that to come back long term, I think gives the town council options. Just like the growth that will come from the apartments gives the business community options, the fiscal benefit coming from this tip gives the town council options. And we don't want to author what those options, how that should be spent. That's for you all to do and to manage. We just want to install the asset, run it well, so it's worth the money we all hope it's worth, so it produces that kind of fiscal impact. We believe in investing in optimism, and we think our proposal allows both the population growth and the fiscal opportunity to give this body or successor members opportunities for the next 10 years to really be creative with how those funds are spent, be it additional law enforcement or public safety, infrastructure programs. We don't know. We don't want to be the author of that, but we just think it's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, just a little footnote on the fiscal impact, the plus 27, with nothing changing, meaning businesses stay the same, everything stays the same. The factory is a net positive $27,000 a year. And that's, again, everything's just as it is. It won't stay that. I think we will see more activity down here. I think we'll see another restaurant open up, because I think that'll be an opportunity. The other thing to think about, and this is how I'm thinking about the houses on Bird Street, I'm thinking about the factory, and I'm thinking about the property out James River Road, because Southern Homes is going to do all that stuff. And for my money, I would like to see the density of that growth happen downtown, because that's where we've got the streets, that's where we've got the infrastructure, we've got high-speed internet down here now. Like, that is where we want our density, because James River Road is a tough road. And so I don't think we want, I don't know how many units they're going to come back with a PUD for out there. But if we're going to invest in our growth as a population, which we need to remain viable, because we are facing, I do think we're here. I think we're doing okay, but I know a structural deficit is looming, and I know we're going to have to figure out where that money's coming from. So is it more, right now it's just BPOL and business taxes, and I'd love for it to stay there as long as possible, but we need more businesses and we need more foot traffic to move it. So going out James River Road, if we could sort of like hit our goals by building in with urban infill, stuff that's already built downtown, where the density is already accommodated for, because there's sidewalks and you can walk and you can have a business, and there's not as much of a parking need because you will be walking or biking from those residences, then we can think maybe about James River Road as a lower density development when we get there, which will probably be coming down the pike fairly soon. So that's just how I'm thinking, sort of bigger picture about where we decide to plan for growth.
I'm just wondering where the $2.5 million figure came from. It seems like there's been some preliminary talks. So we haven't come up with that. And then my second question would be, since Mr. Bowles is here and Matt, you all reviewed the revised property, and I'd just like to know, does it, pass the test, the year to the Code of Virginia, and you all say that's an offer we could consider, not should, we could. In other words, is it legal?
I believe it's reasonable.
Matt went through the analysis, and did you share that with council?
Yes.
So you've seen the analysis, and reasonable doesn't mean what you think it means, sir. I think you know that.
I know what
It means, it's, both of them are reasonable. And certainly the pumps on the levee are the lifeblood of the town and the downtown and whatever, but the proffer that Matt approved was more reasonable, if you want to call it that, or was reasonable under the statutory definition because it met the terms of the statutory definitions that were allowed for profit. So that's basically what he decided, and I agreed with him. Matt, could you talk about how you came up with the $2.5 million?
It is half of the increase of the property's assessed value. Right now, the owner of that property pays a county tax bill of about $40,000 a year on it. With a renovation done of the scale that we're describing, the taxable value goes up to about $400,000 a year. And that's the check paid to Albemarle County, nothing to Scottsville under current law. In the TIF agreement, because a project like this meets some of the county's strategic goals, they surrender for perhaps a 10-year period, say half of the new revenue. So they still see a revenue increase and they can use it to fund their services, and they keep $200,000 new dollars, but they yield back in a revenue sharing framework the other $200,000 to the town. So if you say 200,000 a year times 10, that's 2 million. If you think it gets up to $250,000 a year times 10, that's 2.5 million total. Those contract details have only just begun. As I said, they put in their preliminary application, so there's still some negotiation to do about the exact money commitments, what kinds of goals we would want to set in general terms for how it's used, and the contract structure of who receives the payments, because all of that matters. A good similar example is the Southwood Trailer Park redevelopment, a blighted property where there were a lot of human services and public safety problems. Habitat for Humanity invested in mixed use and mixed income redevelopment at that property. That met with the county's goals, and they used this TIF structure to grant some of the new value. The houses are worth more than what the trailers were, and the homeowners pay taxes. So the county sends some of their revenue back to Habitat, which feeds their mission and helps them provide services and reinvest in homeownership there. So in that case, Habitat was the applicant and received the grant money, and there was no town. Here, we're available as providing some community services and might be able to benefit from that too. And the county staff have been initially supportive of that.
The county has a TIF policy, and it has a minimum of 50%. It goes to 100%. So that's where Matt, it wasn't involved in the calculation, but he came at the lower end of the policy. And then it has a 10-year payment payout. And all that's coming from the county's TIF policy approved by the Board of Supervisors. So it's not just being pulled out of thin air. You have some basis to try to calculate what's the Board of Supervisors going to do. And also it's ultimately up to the EDA, but in the end, it's up to the Board of Supervisors to approve it, since it's their tax money that they're foregoing.
That's right.
What are they going to approve? So
in my seat on the county EDA, I have twice voted on TIF related payments where the county staff had negotiated, but the TIF had the payments authority. And we said, yeah, that's consistent with what the Economic Development Authority does. We vote yes to make the payments.
And I'm familiar with TIF policy because I'm the attorney for the Albemarle Industrial Economic Development Authority. Sure.
I would like to take a minute and just talk about housing. I'm going to say something anecdotally, and then I want to actually talk to the housing people who are here who have some housing thoughts. Anecdotally, some years ago, I have 6 kids who grew up in Scottsville. I have 6 grandkids. One of them wanted to live here in Scottsville and wasn't able to. In fact, had to help them find a house in Esmont. I have found over the years when people having some difficulty trying to find housing in Scottsville, we're told the governor has an initiative of wanting to have more housing and more apartments in the state. And communicating with our supervisor, I found that the county recognizes the need for housing and for apartments. I'm told that the county, as a county, we have about 1,500 people that the population growth every year. If you look at our census of the last 20 years, Scottsville decreased both censuses. So that being said, I was going to ask the housing specialist who are here, what advice do you have? Is there a need for housing? Do you agree with this from a sense of it meeting a need of housing in this area or this part of the county? Or Scottsville is also the center of a region that includes 4 counties. How would 205 apartments possibly help in the overall housing need of this area?
I appreciate that. That's the last of the subject matter experts who are here with us. Ms. Highland on the Fluvanna Louisa perspective, and Mr. Holbrook and Ms. Walker from the Albemarle staff.
So I run the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation, and we do work regionally with Albemarle, Nelson County, and Greene County and Charlottesville. And we're all experiencing very similar problems with housing shortages, particularly for the older population and the younger population. We have just 28 rental units, and if I had 1-bedroom units, I could rent 1,000 of them, I think, tomorrow. Louisa is having much worse problems because
You mean that for real? You could rent? I mean,
I get knocks on the door every day. We get calls frequently. There is for our aging population, there are a lot of people who would like to downsize and get out of this 3-bedroom house, and they don't know where to go. So they stay where they are. So we replace roofs and keep them in their houses as long as we can, because there are there's no sufficient rental housing for them. And what happens in more rural areas is you have trailer parks. So that's the other option. That's the solution to apartment buildings. And I'm a Scottsville resident, and that my backyard is in Scottsville, but my house is not. So I have a personal interest in this as well. And I was torn about it at first, but knowing the severe need we have and then seeing what's been put together by town council, we had serious concerns. Law enforcement, absolutely. Fire, absolutely. Water, it's critical. Traffic. These are all viable, real concerns. And I talked to Matt briefly about, educating everybody on what are the answers, what are our options on these. And I think the TIP is an excellent solution. I'm very pleased to see that. This is a very costly project, and it does something on several fronts. It gets rid of local blight, which reduces all of our property values. It creates a solution for local residents. I think when you talk about 205 apartments, and that being maybe 350 total residents, you're talking about significant residents that are already here. You're not necessarily growing the population exponentially or by 350 residents. You're going to see a lot of people who are lacking housing in this region. They're doubling up. There are apartment, basement apartments people are renting out, but significantly those are gone. In all of the surrounding counties, with the housing explosion and everything flying off the shelves in 2021, those rentals are gone. People own those houses now. So we're in a more severe rental crisis than we have been, that we have ever seen. So that's, it's definitely multifaceted. We're using existing infrastructure. We're utilizing that. I love the small town feel. I like being out. I have a little farm for the people who know me. I want to see things stay as rural as possible. So keeping the growth in a building that's already here and rehabilitating it, getting that used again is a fantastic use of the space.
Thank you all for having us this evening. We'll take a moment to chime in on the discussion and can certainly address any questions that you all may have. I will share right up front that my name is Philip. I'm the Housing Program Manager for Albemarle County Office of Housing. I believe that the TIF was mentioned, and I wanted to clarify before we get going that Dr. Stacy Pethia is the housing policy manager for the Office of Housing here in Albemarle County. So any questions regarding that would have to go to Stacy. In essence, on the side of the shop that I run, we work with Department of Housing and Urban Development funded voucher programming. So when it comes to affordable housing, that's near and dear to my heart, running that type of an agency, and is, why I got into the housing business in the first place, is to help people get housed. And so we're able to do so through the HUD funded voucher programming. What that means is we have families that are living all across our jurisdiction with vouchers, and many of our voucher holders call Scottsville home. And as you're aware, we have Scottsville School Apartments right in town as well. And we actually manage that moderate rehabilitation program in partnership with Piedmont Housing Alliance. So I can't necessarily share details from a policy perspective, but can certainly address if you all have any questions generally about the voucher program. We can address those, and want to point out, we do have a lot of families who want to live in Scottsville, who want to live down this direction. They love the feel of the town. We came down and visited recently and really enjoyed walking around. They want that kind of feeling of being down in Scottsville. And the powerful part of the voucher program is that it enables our families to choose where they want to live. And so some may opt to move down to Scottsville. And hearing of 200 plus units open up would certainly make them happy as they're looking around. So that's me, though. I want to let Carter speak as well. Carter is our housing program coordinator.
I should ask you a question.
Oh, sure.
Just a quick follow-up. You mentioned that in the voucher program that you have already, you're serving people in the Scottsville area. And you said, but the same thing, I forget your name over here, you said, Kim said that it sounds like you're saying that if the apartments existed today, some of these people would jump at the chance to be there. Is that what you're saying?
I would say yes. One of the challenges that we're looking at right now is units just don't exist. Our clients go out and search for a unit to use their voucher in. A voucher's like gold, and they can't find somewhere to live because the units don't exist.
I'm sorry, just to come back to it. In the project, one of the nice things about having an opportunity for people to use vouchers is there is a desire that we have for people to have affordable housing, and that gives an opportunity for people to come and use a resource that's already available to them. We just need to have the space. I think, and you said it well, that it's a building that already exists. So again, it sounds like both of you are already saying, one of the questions we've had, and like it's been widely talked about in the town, well, who would come or who would do this? It seems like both of you are saying people that are already here would live there, and people who might want to come to Scottsville. But like either way, you seem to both be saying that there's a great need for this.
There's a huge need. I'm building 25 units in Louisiana right now, and 9 are slated because of the way we do our funding. I'm able to have a preference, first of all, for people who are local, and then 9 of the units are slated for essential workers. So EMTs, fire, rescue, police, teachers, county workers. Those units will all be slated specifically for preference.
What was the legal mechanism for that? Were those zoning conditions? I'm sorry.
Oh, I defer to our town administrator. That's a fine question.
It's through, part of it is through home funds, and we're receiving some HUD funding as well for that.
But you made it a program guideline.
Yes, so it's a preference. It is not a requirement. It's if once we go through all of our preference, then we can go outside of that area, but it will be our local residents who are serving in those capacities that have first dibs on.
Okay. I heard interest in something like that, but I had not seen that done in zoning conditions before, so I was worried about the legality of it. If we waited on that until a housing program design later, we get it that point. Right. Not zoning, but later. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about the voucher thing, because in some ways that sounds like addressing a concern that people have had about making sure that people who live in town are able to afford to live there, or, you know, who live in the immediate environment. But I'm curious how the voucher sort of balances against like the reduced rate AMI. So, and this may be more policy than you can answer, but if you've got a voucher, are you paying it based on the market rate, or are you paying it based on what's it covering? What gap is it covering?
FMR question.
Right, so, well, I used to cover the voucher program for living on these accounts, and they do it, the person pays 30% of their income.
Mhm.
And then above and beyond that, what the market rate is what they'll cover, but if there's a specific rate due to their income bracket, they will pay that portion, the voucher will pay that portion.
Great, so
That gap.
So if they're looking at an apartment that it's rented at 60% AMI, because 20% of the units are going to be 60% AMI,
Right.
and 30% of the renter's income falls below that, so it covers the gap of that difference. Got it.
I can, would it help? I've got a personal example. One of the participating voucher landlords in town is Larry Barnett, who was my landlord for a while. And he had, so one of my neighbors was using the voucher. I don't know which neighbor. And the rent's $900. So the family pays 30% of their income. Maybe they're only making $1,000 a month on Social Security and pension. So they pay $330, and then $560 is the voucher payment. So there's always a fair share of their income component. But you know, I had no problems with any of my neighbors and don't know who it was, and it worked fine. And Mr. Barnett was a satisfied landlord because that part of the rent was guaranteed from a federal payment. And for any tenant issues that came up, he had the staff, Mr. Holbrook and Ms. Walker to help with. So he had been a long-time client of this office, and I appreciated seeing that from his perspective.
Do we have Ms. Walker speak if he has anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. Yeah, that's actually a good segue, because what I do primarily is work with the landlords on our program. So I am, my title is housing program coordinator, but a lot of what I do is engaging with the landlords and acting as their liaison for our office. Much like the clients have a housing specialist, I, kind of serve as that for the landlords. So we have, we are constantly seeking to engage new landlords. That's something that I think, especially coming into calendar year 23, we want to do more of, more outreach. We actually have a bonus bucks incentive program, which was founded in CARES money and continued through ARPA. So there is kind of an end to it, but we're currently offering bonus payments for new landlords when they lease up one of our clients as a first-time owner. And yeah, I'm kind of there to help troubleshoot. We do an onboarding training for new owners when they come onto the program, and then I'm there sort of as their immediate point of contact if they have any questions kind of along the way. So it is sort of, it's intended to be, it works for the landlord, for the small business model, as well as for the client is the goal. And landlords, of course, are like key to this program, just because they are the ones that are providing the physical spaces for our clients. We don't own any public housing. We don't have any physical buildings that we own. So we really rely on our landlords and on our relationships with landlords throughout the entire jurisdiction to provide housing to our voucher holders.
Mr. Briscoe has a question.
Just to ask the same thing that I asked your other two housing specialists, do you also recognize that if this site was turned into 205 apartments, that it would both serve a need and also be something that is helpful in the region?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of what I do is we're not allowed to place clients in units. They have to go out and find their own place. That's part of the great thing about the program, is that choice. But I help provide some like listings from our landlords directly to clients. And so there's a huge piece of like that need. I see that need because I see clients who are, you know, trying to find that rental that works for them. And it's tough right now. So.
Do you all, just one other question for the three of you. What is one of the things in working in the tour industry that I have for 3 decades, there's times where the hotel market is a buyer's market and sometimes it's a seller's market. How do you all see the next 5 or 10 years in terms of what's happening out there related to this issue? Is it getting more difficult? You said right now it's very difficult, but what's happening out there in this region that's gonna take it one way or the other? How do you all see it?
Oh, is that for me or was that?
Well, any one of the three of you.
Sorry.
I was gonna actually say that on behalf of the county, we're gonna have to decline to offer any type of a projection like that. But we can say that we are hopeful every day to see more affordable housing pop up, because that's how our families can find a place to call home. Sorry, I know that's not more helpful from
It's
a baller projection standpoint.
Just asking what you see. That's
Right.
The one thing I would say, I don't know, do you have something you're gonna add?
You're always gonna have a need for rentals, and right now we have such a deficit that it's gonna take many years to climb back out of that again. There's like, it's not going to be a decreasing demand anytime soon.
Thank you. I just want to say as a town councilor, I'm going to say this to everybody here. If we, as a town, could ideally pick when we want certain things to happen, we might have a chance to say, okay, we want this to happen 5 years from now or 8 years from now. It doesn't work that way. We have to respond to what is presented to us. And right now, we have a choice. We have a visionary choice in the town. And for my part, I have always opted for people. I'm a people fan. And when I say I'm a people fan, what I mean by that is being a dad of 6 kids, I've opted for a life of inconvenience, so to speak, or a life of living in close proximity to other people in terms of making choices. There are legitimate issues that our fire department, our police department, water, sewer, streets, all of those have to be addressed no matter what we do in the future. The question about our vision going forward is, are we interested in looking at a very unique idea related to an old building that needs fixed? Are we interested in doing something that's going to put the town in a trajectory that it's not currently on related to this path, and it has its pluses and minuses to go on that trajectory? Or will we opt the other path, which we know is going to be an industrial park? So I simply say, as we frame the conversation, I understand legitimately, like going back to you, Chief, if we opt to do apartments, and that's, I think, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on the echelon side, we're talking 3 years from now or so a process, or 2.5 to 4 years or something, right? Is that correct?
It's about 8 years to 18 months to design, get the approvals, get the financing, get started. It's at least 18 months to build. So yes, I think 3 years is a conservative, from this point, if we're magically approved, to actually being open. So probably a little bit beyond that.
So we'd have to adjust, and then on the other hand, I understand in terms of how we as a town, and I think Meredith, you made a really good point, if this was in process too, there's things we have to do in the timing of how we would bring services in line, both related to the fire department and related to the police. So all that, there is a question as we as a town have to decide, as we think this through, which of these two options is what we want to do.
Okay. Any other comments? What once?
Just to add on to your fire police and EMS.
Yeah.
You have one EMS unit that services the southern end of Albemarle County.
That's right.
You are 25 minutes before the next one comes.
Mhm.
We are your only EMS responder,
Mhm.
which means we're sitting 25 minutes. If you double, what you're talking about, close to doubling the town's population, along with traffic, along with people, you do not have the fire EMS that you will have now. You are used to a pretty immediate response. You are going to double that response.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Well, I don't know, well, so.
you're gonna double.
Well, and this may not be, I guess, the emergency medical, this might just be volunteer fire. I know, was it Michael, your son, presented, the increase at the the apartments, 200, well, I think he said 500 people. So if it was full, as an 8% increase to the regional population that the volunteer fire serves. And the week that he ran the numbers for, there were 20 calls. And so I said, okay, so 8% increase in population, 8% increase in calls is 1.6 more calls on a week of 20. And so that's a direct percentage increase. And I'm thinking, because I know I live down here, and so I know that if I go into cardiac arrest and the ambulance isn't available, it's a 35-minute wait. So I know where I am. So I recognize that it will be an increase in services down here. I also want to make sure that our services, especially what we can ask from the county for, get better. And I know that also relies on calls for service, because they don't just put career guys down here, or they don't invest more money unless there are more calls. And I know that puts everyone in an awkward situation, because it means there's like a gap where like you need service and you don't quite have what you need. But I don't want our service to stay the same. I think it's, it is what it is. It's good. I'm so glad you guys are here. Especially helps my home insurance, because you're just over there. They don't know that if you guys are otherwise involved, I'm actually in real trouble. My house is gone. We don't tell them that. So I want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves, the town, so that we can make more demands of the county for services down here. And so that's that's how I'm thinking about the fire and emergency services. So
We can touch on that. Retaining right now is an issue. People do not want to work. And so getting guys to come in and ladies to stay 25, 30 years. I just retired 30 years from the city. The increase with the apartments that have been put all over the city. We were a fire department of 5 trucks. We are now 3 ambulances, 2 24-hour medics a day.
Yeah.
Along with cars that's running a 10-mile area. And those ambulances are on the road 24/7.
Yeah.
And they cannot handle that 10 miles, especially with the number of apartments that have been put in, which you're talking about putting in, the clientele that you're talking about putting in, EMS does.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. And that's just like a regional challenge. And I know we're part of it, and it's here. And I have a friend who used to work for Albemarle Fire, and I won't use his name, but he left because pay, And so I also want to position ourselves within the county as a body to ask for more pay for fire. I know you're shaking your head and laughing, but that's where I want to be. And maybe it's a little pie in the sky to ask people to pay our fire more, but that's where I want to position ourselves, because we won't get better pay, we won't get better services unless we position ourselves to ask for them. So I sincerely appreciate everything you all do, and I know you're working hard for us. So thank you.
And I just say thank you too. What you are saying, I think is really important. Don't discount it at all. I mean, you guys are the lifeblood of our existence, and being a Buffalo Bills fan, if there's ever been a week to understand the importance of a life-saving measure, it was this week. I just want to ask this both to Southern and Echelon, and maybe more to you, Charlie. It might be helpful, maybe as we think of this issue, why, Chief, so again, you guys Southern specifically had two options. You know, you guys specifically have brought, working with Echelon. What made you think that the apartments are the way to go? In other words, like, as of the options, you have a plan B, but your plan A was working with these guys. So maybe if you just explain that a little bit, both for the public and for us as a town council, as we think of this, I think it's helpful to understand as a business, you guys are planning to be here long term. You're planning to not only buy the properties that were Dr. Hertz properties, you're buying this old factory that was the brainchild of a town council, the Lions Club, and the mayor, and it gave jobs for 30 people, 300 people for 64 years. That being said, y'all are going to do something with that factory. So if you would just maybe take a minute to tell us your thoughts, both options.
Yeah, really great prepared to talk about company's ethos tonight.
Give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot.
You know?
We have some commercial in our portfolio. We have some industrial space in our portfolio inside Crossroads. And those are great, but residential as well. We build communities and we like produce places that people call home and live in. Because they're families, you know, make memories. It's a different kind of satisfaction from work when you're dealing with people and when you're dealing with some guy who runs a company and needs a warehouse. They're just different things. Neither one is good or bad. They are both necessary. So that's why we always look at a residential option for anything we're doing. And this opportunity with Echelon presented that in a really cool and creative way that would do something unique. We also like to do unique things. If anybody's familiar with some of the stuff that we've built and developed before, a lot of it's infill. A lot of it is as close to the center of the Charlottesville as we can get, because we don't really specialize in the tract subdivisions as much as we specialize in you know, finding creative solutions to problems that other people want to thought. But we don't do historic rehabilitation. There's a lot of extra expertise that Echelon has that we don't. Hence the partnership. So I think that answers the decision of why I was with them as partners going over here.
I have a question. Did you look at the small area plan at all?
For Scottsville?
Yeah,
of course.
Did you look at any of those models there? Or consider those at all?
With the dense mixed use stuff?
Yeah, well, several mixed use type, because there was, you know, the town spent 6 months looking at those the small area plan and looked at 3 or 4 models, and this model was never brought up, but it's part of it. But it's I just wondered if you looked at those models and why you didn't consider those models.
We did, and we did consider them, and Echelon has considered them too. A lot of commercial space there just isn't economically viable. There isn't a population density to draw people off of Valley Street 3 blocks away to go to anything other than a destination. Yes, if there was a daycare or something there.
Medical facility.
Sure, if there was a medical office, I think that would be a destination that people could go. Well, we can't fill 180,000 square feet of medical offices. That's huge. I mean, that's like hospital size. It's close. And so it's just not a viable alternative. A small commercial component in the residential project definitely could work. Even that, I think it's gonna be tough to find tenants for, but Echelon has volunteered to do that. So I'm glad that they have.
I can support that, sir, with sort of the timing of the staff work, because you saw that. Okay.
You know the staff work?
No, I mean I've read enough that I was just curious about that. I don't think we have to do that.
I would actually ask Matt if you would comment on that, what you were just gonna say, if that's okay.
The town engaged the Waukesha planning consultancy for the small area team, and we were impressed with their work. Their work included a spreadsheet, the pro forma on financial analysis of why, of the finances on the project. And I had seen their portfolio and was hopeful that they would like the work in the small area plan and buy the building. But their pro forma, making it pay to do what they recommended in the small area plan, was not profitable for them. And so they went away. And one of their colleagues in the field now approaches us with something that is profitable. And the Waukesha report showed a public funding gap of $2.5–3 million necessary to make what they said they could do profitable. And absent that funding, it couldn't be done. And that was why they did not invest, and how we get to what we have here.
One of the, I don't know, did you read the Waukesha report too? And both the Waukesha report and the small area plan require a secondary access. And did you consider a secondary access to the facility? Because that was a key component to both the Waukesha and the small area plan.
Yeah, I don't think that those looked at it as a traffic engineering standpoint. They looked at it as a long range planning perspective. And the idea of getting a second access to anywhere from anywhere is a good long-term planning goal. I don't think that the folks from Scott's Landing Farm over there would want a road to their property. But somebody like that would have to offer that situation that would make a pathway feasible. So Bird Street has handled 300 employees of traffic for decades, and the traffic engineers who've done the reports are the real experts. So I won't get into that, but yeah, to answer your question, we thought of it, but there's no route for it.
Right. For decades, the town council's been trying to get VDOT to.
I know that.
Mr. Briscoe has one more.
Meredith does too.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, from Echelon, I asked the question of Southern, I would ask the question of you all, why Scottsville? Why did you come to this town? I know you've said some of this already, but I think it's helpful for people to hear.
Our interest in Scottsville actually predates the Waukesha report. We love the place, the location, the feel of it. You know, a lot of people try really hard in placemaking. You'll already have that. You have a sense of identity, destination. We looked at the building, couldn't figure out a design solution, went away, came back when we had one, and then worked with Dr. Hurd in Southern to come up with a partnership. So our interest has actually been 5–6 years now plus, and we've been working on this scenario for almost 2. Just to get to this point. Like we've said many times, we like to do meaningful projects that have meaningful positive impacts on community development. And we believe this is exactly what Scottsville needs. Yes, there are challenges, but even the opposition comments in some of the meetings talked about how we need more people. We need more people. That's come up time and time again. And this is a once in a generation opportunity to do that right. And we believe we can. It's a challenging building, it's a challenging site. But we think we have the right team to pull off a great project. And we know there's divided opinion and we respect that, but we believe it is a great project and it'll be fantastic for the town. That in 5–10 years, people will look back and say, wow, why was there a divided opinion about this? But we hope to prove the critics wrong and hope to invite them to be supporters long term and see the positive.
I saw some head shaking that the secondary access, and is that a concern? Fire safety wise?
It could come into play depending on the traffic downtown.
Okay.
During your rush hour times, I think chief's pointed out, we got 700 and some odd traffic during the day on average. You add whatever the departments would bring vehicle wise, and you're piling them up on Bird Street and our access to get in there, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, again, we appreciate everybody who took part on the outside of the council, and thank you all for being here, for your opinions and points of view and thoughts. And I thank our developers over there for being with us. And we will move on to our new topics. Progress report on the budget.
What?
Somebody wants to-
I forgot.
There it is. Didn't know there was more to the agenda.
Sorry.
Could I have a parting word about this silly picture I made?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very curious about the picture. I would love a parting word on the picture.
We're not finished.
Do you want a card?
I do.
Kim? Oh, you got-
No, you got a whole bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think,
$5.
She's a good, she's a good neighbor.
Cheap.
She's a good neighbor.
I would have gone higher.
Uh-oh.
all right, let's, we're gonna postpone the new topics till we have time next week, depending on how the agenda goes.
Okay.
So, February 23rd,
Thank you. Council, it's a minor issue among all of the weighty ones of public service and finance that you have here. But it's personally important to me. And I'd like to beg a couple moments to share it. My dad's career was in Park Service landscaping, and he mostly worked not in big national parks, but at the historic homes of the East, Harper's Ferry and Arlington House. So I spent a lot of time as a kid in historic, important buildings. And my first meaningful city hall job was the historic renovation of an old hotel in Winchester. I did the grant supporting work and the application for the funding. So for 12 years of local government work, I've always been somewhat connected to architecture and historic renovations. It's something that means a lot to me. So one of the community interests expressed in our comprehensive plan and the work of our architectural review board, a big part of the identity of Scottsville is the value of the beautiful historic buildings that we have. And when we have the opportunity to repair a building instead of demolishing a building, or improve a building instead of letting it fall into decay, we generally try to make that happen. I think this building has genuine historic value. Historic tax credit financing is a key part of it. In the application, it will be designated a National Historic Landmark and maintained in that way. Last month, I joined an urban planning lecture at VCU and was at the architecture school, which I don't visit very often. And this exhibit struck my eye. It was the architecture students' field trip to Venice. And they took many, many pictures and made many, many drawings. And they laid out their drawings for the photographs for anyone to take. So these are from their lines. And the comparison of what they did to the architecture renderings before us, gave me some sense of affinity, that there are vertical spaces and crossing lines and light and shadow, interior courtyards with some architectural affinity from Venice, where the architecture students go, to this industrial renovation project. This is an exaggeration, but I mean to say that this proposal has architectural merit, and it's consistent with our goals and my work to try to create prize-winning architecture where possible. And I genuinely believe that this would be an architectural prize-winning project if approved. It's not my prize, it's the architect's prize, but I think it's a career-making move for Forrest Frazier, the architect who has drawn this. He's done good work in Richmond that has been similarly prize-winning. And if everything else were the same, the project that creates historically significant architecture should be preferred over the one that's not. Like I said, it's far from the most important issue facing you, but I didn't want to move through the meeting without mentioning that. Thank you for your time.
No, Matt, you never did take it for you, Slam.
Go for it.
That's actually, again, working in the tour industry and visiting many at site. This is kind of a big deal, like this approach of trying to take a structure and to give it meaning and a building such as this, again, this is another angle, so thank you. I was gonna say thank you, and there's an aspect of my job. This is what we do. We go into the building museum in DC is an example of that, as a repurposed building that is, or many buildings that we do in the tour world. And this will be a place that will have a secondary life. The question is which one. So thank you. That's
All right, thank everybody for a good meeting.
Yeah.
Everything's really good.